The third round of the Michelin Le Mans Cup brings us back to the south of France. And we are about 50 kilometres east of Marseille in this spectacular landscape. Formerly the high-tech test track, although Paul Ricard always was its circuit in its own right 50 years ago when this place first opened in 1970. A reminder of the calendar then, we kicked things off here in mid-July in Castellet, and we have returned after a visit to Spa-Francorchamps for the second round of the season. After this, we look forward to two 55-minute races as part of the Road to Le Mans event during Le Mans Week, which of course is held in September in this rather peculiar year. And then later on in the season, a trip to Monza in Italy. And we'll end the year at Portimao in Portugal for the Michelin Le Mans Cup, where we'll head to the more staple 2-hour races. This coined as the Le Castellet 120, because we will be racing for 120 minutes, and each of the LMP3s will be stopping twice. The GT3 cars, just a single stop required for those. However, there are extended pit stop times for the top 5 teams in the championship. It is known as the pit stop handicap time, and we'll run you through that as per it being appropriate. My name's Johnny Palmer. I'm joined by Bruce Jones for the next 2 hours. It's a busy old day here at Circuit Paul Ricard with both the ELMS weekend and the Michelin Le Mans Cup races all crowbarred into Saturday. So a late finish for ELMS into the darkness. This will be held though in full light. Question is, will the weather be on our side?
Well, the good news is, Johnny, it's coming our way. It was raining around breakfast time today. It dried out. Then we've had little sprinkles of rain. It made qualifying super interesting, maybe too interesting for the Michelin Le Mans Cup and the European Le Mans Series runners. But right now, for the first time since yesterday, when it was blue skies all around, it's dry here, or drying. I would hesitate to say the track is fully dry, but it will be by the time the cars have done their inspection laps. But the track is declared as wet. Rain lights must be on low mode, so still changeable. But when we get to the European Le Mans Series race tonight, it's fully expected to be raining at the start and then possibly all the way through from 6:30 to 10:30. But right now, these drivers will be going, thank you. We have a consistent weather condition, consistent tracking conditions, at least for the start, but the visibility far better than it has been at any point here on race Saturday. A solid day of qualifying and racing. It really is quick fire. And right now for the drivers, anybody who got it wrong in qualifying, they'll be just trying to settle down again. But track conditions look good.
Yeah, there was a risk that this race may have to be delayed, the start time delayed, because of a very stop-start ELMS qualifying. There was a red flag in the GTE session for those cars, and then in the LMP2s, put us about an hour behind proceedings by the end of it. But we are due to start this race as per the scheduled time, 2 o'clock, and it will be 120 minutes, so we'll be racing through till 4, and then 2.5 hours later the European Le Mans Series race will take place. A shout to Rory Penttinen, who has managed to bag a very late pole position and his first of the season. The 40-year-old Finn, bronze graded, and has taken part in a number of endurance races in the past, not least the 24 hours around the Nürburgring, the Dubai 24 hours as well. Raced in Asian Le Mans with Graf in the 2019-2020 season. But this is his first year in the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and a podium result already to his name. This will be the first pole position though. And in the Teams Championship for GT3, Iron Lynx leaded on 77 from Kessel Racing on their 44 points. It's narrow actually for second and third, with the third place car only on 42. With that though, also carries the pit stop handicap time as well, and that's the championship leader, car number 8. More news on that in just a second actually. Has to soak up a further 21 seconds during the pit stop, which was already 150 seconds. And there are other cars in the top 5 that also have extended stops, like the 67 Kessel Racing Ferrari. That's got an extra 11 seconds to serve. The 50 Kessel Racing Ferrari, an extra 7 seconds. The other Kessel Racing Ferrari, number 74, an extra 4. And Iron Lynx, finally, car 77, 2 further seconds for the Claudia Schiavone and Matt Griffin car. But the starting grid was only issued 10 minutes or so ago by Alcamel, the timekeepers here. And the number 8 car, Ferrari, is at the back of the grid, Rino Mastronardi. We thought earlier on he had set another pole position. Even chatted to Rino Mastronardi, did Haley. However, after the session, the car failed scrutineering because of a rear diffuser problem. Now, whether that was because of the rear diffuser not being at the required height, possibly so, because there's normally a device that needs to be put underneath the diffuser as a ground clearance thing, right height, or whether some part of that was broken, just not to the required homologation. Anyway, it's almost as if that car didn't take part in qualifying. It's given no time whatsoever, and Rino Mastronardi will have to start from the back. I actually don't think that will affect them hugely, because they're still going to be highly competitive in the race, Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's a race within a race, if you will. 6 cars in the GTE class, so he's lost 5 positions, and we'll see how he goes. And he's the... just double checking, is Reno starting that or Nicholas Nielsen? That driver pairing is super strong.
Reno down on the starting grid. Yeah,
Reno to start
two
that.
At the back.
Well, expect exciting opening laps, and for a lot of the drivers, their only driving today has been on a wet track, and they were interrupted when it got to qualifying. So they've got to just regather their thoughts. But I think for everyone out there, it's just the fact there will be one sort of driving condition at the start of the race, and they can bed down. But of course, we've got the 6 cars in the GT3 class cars and 18 in the P3 class, so they're going to be having the battling at the front of the grid. Nicolas Lapierre passing on a little more information to the Cool Racing squad. That's Christophe, sorry, he's in V2S, it's Nicolas Molini, and of course Nicolas and his teenage teammate Edouard Cahab had that really, really great result, victory at Spa last time out, so his advice is clearly being heeded.
Yeah, absolutely right, and Lapierre he is very much involved with that Cool Racing squad now. I think he's become a shareholder or business partner, and yeah, it's his responsibility to pass on advice, maybe as to how the track is losing its grip, because he was out in the earlier session. He may know where the damp patches are forming today and where to take it easy. Sensible thing, obviously, when the rain does fall, if it falls, is to stay off those curbs and stay off the white lines.
Exactly what I was going to chip in with, because though the track may look dry, famously racing curbs, the paint on them and the serrations on them just retain the water.
Yeah.
And I've, across the decades, heard so many drivers warned about that, and there's always one.
Yeah,
out over the curbs and beyond.
Well, you can have the discussion pre-race, but then there's so much that kind of takes over. The adrenaline starts pumping, and a lot of that sort of peripheral information can be forgotten or not necessarily retained. So always good to just throw that into the driver's cockpit late in the piece. Cars back on pit road now, so they have had some sort of exploratory lap, but return to the pits rather than to a dummy grid, which I was expecting.
Well, we're seeing slick tyres on them. I don't know if they all went out on slicks or if some went out on intermediates and come back and said, you know what, it's good for slicks. But certainly looking through the wheel arches, that the gaps at the top, Cool Racing appear to be on slicks. They're number 69. And we'll have an eye on the others as they go up and down the pit lane. But this race due to start at the top of the hour. That's just over 11 minutes away from now. So pit lane will be closing relatively soon. So it'll be back on the deck on whatever rubber you're on. That's what you're running. But right now the pit lane at a standstill. But people starting to assemble on the grid.
We are opening pit exit in 2 minutes, under 2 minutes to allow LMP3s on track. Under 2 minutes to allow LMP3 cars on track.
There is the confirmation then, and Iron Lynx are well placed in the championship with a 19-point lead over the 67 Kessel Racing crew. Kessel actually have cars 2nd, 3rd and 4th in the title hunt. And in LMP3, DK Engineering come here again leading a Michelin Le Mans Cup campaign. They're no stranger in doing that, having won the championship in 2019, 2018 and 2017. You may remember that in 2016 it was just known as the Michelin GT3 Le Mans Cup. However, LMP3s did join the party at Le Mans, and that was judged to go so well. The very next season, LMP3s were included as well.
May head to pit exit. We are at 1 minute to open pit exit for LMP3s. Under 1 minute to open pit exit for LMP3s. LMP3s may head to pit exit if they want.
The difference is your Le Mans entry for next year, 2021, only available via the GT3 category. So if you're champions in GT3, that's an automatic entry for the following year's Le Mans. That can't be said for LMP3. But kind of what it does do is set you up nicely if you wanted to do a European Le Mans Series campaign in the baby prototypes the following
30
season.
seconds to open pit exit for LMP3 cars.
And often we've seen a team in Michelin Le Mans Cup first of all, then work their way into LMP3 and ELMS, and eventually into LMP2 in ELMS. So there's a definite ladder system in place, and a great chance to just get used to this
10,
type of racing
9,
from a driver's
8,
perspective, but also
7,
when you're managing a team.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. LMP3 is on track. LMP3 is on track.
There's the signal, and the CD Sport number 5 car bursts into life. These new Orica prepared Nissan engines do sound great. They're 5.6 litre V8s these days rather than the 5 litre Nissan, the older engine that was utilised last season and for 3 seasons prior to that. The difficulty though is that it's a new engine and it rather uses the fuel more than Orica were expecting. They were running them on dynos obviously for race simulations, no indication at all that they would be running out of fuel much earlier than is reality, and told to rectify that problem in time for Spa, which was round 2. That wasn't possible. We're now here at Ricard and still no solution can be found.
9.
So an
8,
extra stop is going to be weaved into this race,
6,
and that will be the case for the rest of the year.
4, 3, 2, 1. GT3 cars may go to the track now. GT3 cars may go on track now.
And all 6 cars then will be released from the pit lane, including the new pole sitter, and a point going instead off to the number 8 to the 74 Kessel Racing car of Michel Broniszewski and David Perel. Good to have the PZ Obera Zürichsee by TFT Porsche back. Just caught a glimpse of the 911 GT3R there leaving the pit lane with Nicky Leutwiler strapped in for the opening stint. Got Julian Anlauer to hand that car over to. There's also been an adjustment to the driving time since last season. Used to be that the minimum drive time for either driver was 55 minutes. That's been shortened to 50 minutes. So probably with, I think across the board, bronzes put in for the opening stint in all 24 cars. They'll all be pitting after 50, 51, 52 minutes, the earliest opportunity to get their quicker drivers in. And there was an extra bulletin released regarding the 2 stops that the LMP3s will have to make. The first stop of the 2 cannot be made before the hour mark, and the second stop of the 2 has to be done after 100 minutes. What it doesn't say, as far as I can tell, is which stop. So basically, you're not allowed to. Sorry, beg pardon. At the latest, the first stop can be an hour. So basically, in the first hour, and then you get 50 minutes to make your next stop. I think I'm right in saying, yeah. So it's the shorter stop, which is 40 seconds from pit in to pit out. It's literally a splash, and that's all that this new engine requires to get to the finish, to provide that insurance policy. It doesn't provide you any movement as far as maybe doing a driver change at the same time, because it has to be fuel only for that 40-second stop. And we discovered that at Paul Ricard in the opening round, when we wondered whether United were weaving in just that extra bit of a plan to do a driver change at about an hour and 15 minutes to get Andy Merrick back in the car. They couldn't do that in the end, and they needed to stop that car again for a third non-mandatory stop the very next lap in order to do their driver change. Keeps everybody guessing, but I think this latest bulletin probably takes more strategy away from the teams rather than weaving more in. There's the 24 of United Autosports taking up its position, and car 24 will be towards the rear, 6th place rather, and the 23 further down in 16th position, to be started by Daniel Schneider with Andy Merrick to take over. So that's the very car I was talking about. And everybody should know roughly where they need to be, because local marshals with grid boards telling you whether you're at row 5, row 6, row 7. The difficulty is if you're arriving relatively late on the scene, you've got to thread your way through mechanics who are already on the scene there looking after their cars. Motorsport 98 taking up its position in 9th position as well.
The car really worth watching is that Rino Mastronardi Ferrari, starting stone last. He's got 5 class rivals ahead of him rather than behind after the mishap, whatever was wrong with the rear diffuser, but expects some fireworks from the Italian on the opening lap of the race. And his teammate for this weekend, Nicholas Nielsen, taken over both Andrea and Giacomo Piccini. Giacomo normally shares with Rino, and Andrea with Claudio Schivoni, but family reasons have kept them away. So Nicholas Nielsen joining Rino Mastronardi, and Matt Griffin, double duties this weekend. He's also racing in the European Le Mans Series. He's sharing with Claudio Schiavoni. So they will get their stint in the second part of this 2-hour race. 32nd board being showed, the grid now being cleared. So it's Rory Penttinen on pole position. And don't forget, he spent almost all of his relatively brief career racing GTs. Stepping into prototypes is, relatively new ground for him. But that pole lap in very tricky conditions this morning, another good marker in his career, Johnny.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've now reread that bulletin. I didn't put it brilliantly clearly. They got their pit stop to do for 150 seconds. That has to be done in the opening hour, and then your 40-second stop must be done in the final 20 minutes. That's an easier way to put it. So yes, that really does take a bit of strategy out of there, because different teams would take in their splash and dash at different points during that final hour. Some were choosing to do it early, but you've really got little choice now but to do it late in the final 20 minutes of this 2-hour race. A reminder of the grid: Rory Penttinen with the first pole position for Graf, alongside Nicola Morlini, sharing with Edward Kohut. They won last time out at Spa. DKR Engineering Championship leaders: Jean Gloria to start the 3 on the inside of Muna Motorsport, and a good qualifying from Moritz Krantz. And then it's Rinaldi Racing, Alexander Matchell alongside Daniel Schneider for United. Nielsen Racing will start 7th with Rob Hodes and Maurice Smith in the other Cool Racing car from 8th place. On the 5th row, there'll be Motorsport 98 for Eric Dodonka and Nielsen Racing's Tony Wells. The 6th row, it's CD Sport of Spain with Michael Jensen alongside Christoph Krebs for MV2S. 13th and 14th, Racing Experience of Luxembourg, Yuri Wagner during David Hauser again. He'll come later. Steve Parrow in the Rinaldi Racing car. Big crash for Steve here earlier on in the year. Team Virage and Steve Brooks, in inverted commas, will start on the inside of row 8 alongside John Schaumann for United Autosports. It'll be CD Sports' Geoffrey Donada to start car 6 alongside Edex Sports' Stefan Adler. And then we're into the GT3 part of the grid. Kessel Racing from pole position, inheriting that after a post-scrutineering, post-race decision about the rear diffuser for the number 8 championship leading car that will start from the back of the field with no time. Rino Mastronardi sharing with Nicholas Nielsen. Also, remember, they've got 21 extra seconds, additional to the 150, to serve during their pit stop at about half distance. But the front row in GT3 has a Ferrari and a Porsche there. Broniszewski and Leutwiler raring to go from 19th and 20th positions. So Claudius Schiavoni with a fixed 77 Ferrari alongside Murad Sultanov, the Russian, for Kessel Racing. And now a 2x2 grid starts to take shape. In a moment or two, the pace car, the Audi, will peel off into pit lane at turn number 13, and it'll be left to Rory Penttinen to judge the pace and not go too early. Generally speaking, we'll get a message on the screen to say that the race start is under investigation right after it's happened. And that's not to suggest something's wrong with it. They'll just check that everyone is in the correct order and nobody started to overtake before the start line. Start line is in a different position from the finish line here at Ricard, just to ensure that as many cars as possible can be on start finish and in view of the lights before 120 minutes starts to tick by. No rain as far as I can tell for the start of the race, although there's plenty of cloud cover, so the headlights are on for all the cars, and now they pour their way out of Virage du Pont for round 3 of the Michelin Le Mans Cup. 18 LMP2s, 6 GT3s at the back. What can Rino Mastronardi do? He's been put to the back of the grid. We're underway with the third race of the season. It's been a good getaway for both Rory Penttinen and Nicola Molini. Molini's going to try and go around the outside here to swoop into the race lead. He can't do it. There's side-to-side contact, in fact, and Molini goes straight around the runoff. He's going to take the lead by doing that. Surely he'll have to give that one up again. Another car ran wide as well, which may well have been Maurice Smith in the other Cool Racing car. Everybody else in the background, I think, has just about survived. But yes, Molini, unconventional way of taking the race lead there, Bruce Jones.
Yeah, and I think it was Gilles Magnus going wide. Sorry, Moritz Krantz. Yes, the Mulner Motorsport blue-white car going wide, but had no other choice when the field was splintering in front of him. But good to see the track is properly dry. Good to see it's a remarkably tidy start. But again, up that back straight, they're going, I need tyre temperature. I didn't have it at all. Still weaving on the back straight, just trying to get a bit more heat because they know the next corner really requires it. It's been a wet day at Paul Ricard. It's dry now, but the consequences of going wide, we know if they go over the curbing, it will have you sliding away, and particularly at turn 8, we've seen a lot of that. But race leader really pacing it very well indeed, and Jean Gloria dropping back a little bit in third place.
And a movement for 4th position there. Maurice Krantz, I should say, being overtaken by the DKR engineering car. Jean Gloria then started 3rd. He'd trundled to 4th and has gained that place back again. Meanwhile, very busy at the sharp end of the order. That, I think, was Molini giving the race lead back again to Rory Penttinen, because the Cool Racing car is back down to 2nd place. And I think maybe the team got quickly onto the radio regarding Molini's position, said you took that when you were off the track, so just give it back when you still have the opportunity to. And there's an hour and 58 minutes to attempt to reverse their positions once more.
Well, also they were quite fortunate that the battle for 3rd place was a little bit further back, gave them the scope to hand back the lead and not lose it to those behind as well. So very well done indeed. So Rory Penttinen leads the end of the opening, and Nicola Molini just 7/10 of a second in arrears. Swiss driver chasing hard, but now Jean Glorieur's got his tail up from 4th to 3rd. He goes, and 3rd to 2nd is the move he is looking for. Down in GT3, it's Kessel Racing, Michel Bronichewski leading the red and white Ferrari, number 74, but being pushed hard by Iron Links by, yes, you got it, Rino Mastronardi up from 6th in class to 2nd. That's a good opener. Yeah,
didn't take him long, did it? And he's almost level with the race lead. Into turn 3, 4 and 5 they go, and through into the lead goes Rino Mastronardi. So from the back of the field to the sharp end of GT3, and almost tripping over some LMP3s as they turn in at turn 5 there. Meantime, Rory Penttinen stretching his legs a little bit, 0.9 of a second. Porsche overtaking Ferrari is John Hartshorn, now tumbling to the rear of GT3, and Nicky Leutwiler gaining the place. Not sure what happened to Leutwiler in the opening stages. He started on the front row of GT3, found himself at the back, and that's one place that improved upon.
Fleetingly, there was a waved yellow at turn 9 on the opening lap, so I think he possibly went a little bit wide there, but managed to rejoin. But certainly, whenever we've seen Leutwiler in that car, he's been very handy, and I'm quite excited about the prospect of Julian Andlauer taking that over in the second part of this 2-hour race. But right now, very tidy at the front. Rory Penttinen starting to stretch his legs. He was 3/4 of a second to the good, but we had that change for 2nd place. Jean Gloria has got past Nicola Molini, and sorry, no, he hasn't. Sorry, he's being pushed by Moritz Krantz. I just misidentified them. It's still DKI Engineering orange and black ahead of blue and white. Blue and white, very much the sort of colour of choice for the front-running cars. 3 of the front 4 with blue and white.
Yes, it is.
In fact, 5 of the top 6 now. I look at the rest coming through the corner.
The top 4 definitely breaking away. So Maurice Smith with the most amount of work to do as one of the CD Sport cars runs wide on the exit of the final corner.
Was it the MV2S car? No, it's got a replacement front
wing.
Geoffrey
Donada actually losing a place to Eric de Donker. Yes, because Donada leads Hodes. That's for 10th place. Rob Hodes 11th. Christophe Cresp in the MV2S car is in that queue and has that sort of half one colour, half another colour on the nose. So I can see why the confusion. Porsche darting up the inside of the number 77 Ferrari. So that'll give Leutwiler another place. Claudio Schiavone was the car being overtaken there. And that's good movement for the PZ Oberer Zurich, say, by TFT car.
You do need about a quarter of a lap to say that
You
team
do
name,
rather,
don't you?
yes.
I like to think of
keep
it
saying TFT. To be honest.
TFT Racing. But out front, Rory Penttinen was 0.7 of a second clear at the end of the opening lap, 0.8 of a second clear, but now he's 1.1 seconds clear, going down to 0.9 as they get to the end of the Mistral Straight, but he's just trying to make that buffer. Nicola Morlini's got half a second to the good over Jean Gloria, but I think Gloria is going to close in on him. And the major place changing in the P3 class is down towards the midfield, and it's looking very lively indeed. Car 27 gains another position. That's Christoph Kress for MV2S Racing. He's picked his way to the front of that gaggle, may be able to start progressing. That still only takes him up to just outside the top 10 though.
Arcing their way through turns 9 and 10, and then the tricky 11, which is tighter than it looks, leads to a section of track which opens up, which is Garlabin, the right-hander, and then Virage du Lac, the left-hander, Virage du Pont, the right-hander, to bring them back onto the main straight. And the top 4 sweep across the line. 3 laps done. Rory Penttinen, Nicola Morlini, Jean Gloria and Moritz Kranz. First, second, third and fourth. There's about a second now between Penttinen and Morlini. Same again back to Gloria, but he's in turn under pressure from Moritz Kranz as it's nose to tail between the 2 Ferraris. Rino Mastronardi in number 8 ahead of Michel Broniszewski in 74. That's the GT3 lead and very much the 2 highest place in the championship.
Yeah, and they've got one of the P3 cars behind them. That's Stefan Adler in the Edex Sports Ligier. So again, going well at certain points on the circuit. When you get the GT cars alongside the P3, their performance is very, very different. And talking about that top 4, Johnny, in qualifying, they were covered by really very little time, a quarter of a second or thereabouts, and then there was almost another second back to 5th place. So it is true to that form. You've got the first 4 pulling clear, and a gap back to Maurice Smith of some 4 seconds or thereabouts as they started this lap, and that is shown as the field goes up to scene for the 4th time, because the blue and white cars, the trio of them, and the orange and black car, almost the jam in the sandwich there. That's Jean Gloria hanging on into that 3rd place, but Moritz Kranz looked quicker, but he just can't find a way past at the moment. No,
not at this stage. Morlini putting in a very good first sector on this lap, so he's trying to pressurise the race leader Rory Penttinen, and they have started to pair off a little bit. 1st versus 2nd, 3rd versus 4th. Maurice Smith in turn under a little pressure as well from Tony Wells, and Alexander Matchell not as close as he would like to that fight for 5th and 6th. More place changing though in GT3, with Murad Sultanov losing a place to Nicky Leutwiler, who's steadily gaining the places he lost in the opening couple of laps, well, opening lap really, for the Porsche.
Yeah, and in fact his lap times are more than matching the pace of the 2 cars leading the class. So he's the quickest driver in GT in the GT class, but unfortunately what was a scrappy opening lap as Moritz Kranz bounces over the curbs, got too close to the tail of Jean Gloria as they drop down the slope, coming out of turn 2, ran a little wide. Now he's got to do it all over again. 2 through 3, 4 and 5, he closes right on the tail of Gloria, but Gloria's got it covered. But that was a big twitchy moment there for Moritz Kranz, just a little too deep into turn 2, and it got very, very bouncy indeed.
And as these 2 squabble, it means that the Ligiers, the JSP 320s that lead and are 2nd, are just eking out that little bit of a gap. So favouring the Ligier chassis, it would seem. But I think it's only because the Duquesnes are scrapping amongst themselves for the bottom step of the podium in this early stages. Moritz Kranz, can he get by and maybe start to bridge the gap? Nothing between the 2 Ferraris. Michel Broniszewski has taken a bit of time to get up to speed with Rino Mastronardi. I was surprised how easily the pole allowed the number 8 car through into turn 3, but now hasn't given Mastronardi a moment's peace since then.
No, I don't know if it was a slight mistake from Broniszewski, but certainly looked very easy for Rino Mastronardi. They're trying to hang on the tail, but you don't catch a P3 car down the back straight. So having got past them, Stefan Adler's now got to set off up the track, see if he can catch Steve Parrow. For everyone else, it's just looking at the lap times, they're all pretty good. I wouldn't say it's still a fully dry track. I think it's as close as. Maurice Kranz up the inside into the final corner. That can be quite messy here at Paul Ricard. It will still be Gloria in front in 3rd place, but as we saw back in the middle of July, there were incidents out of that final corner.
Yes.
And 2x2 isn't one that really works.
No, unless you can be fully committed on the brakes and come from a long way back through 13. It requires an unconventional line through the penultimate corner and then launching one up the inside of Virage du Pont, and the car you're overtaking needs to be fully aware that it's about to happen. Krantz nibbling away at maybe getting an overlap on Jean Glorieux, and only goes to the outside. If he can keep it there, that'll give him the inside, but he can't. He takes to the run-off and will surely give way to Jean Glorieux and spin it. Oh no, that's a real shame, because clearly Moritz Krantz has got good speed and was attacking the Belgium to try and get through, and he's gone off the track and rejoins in 6th position with very dirty Michelin tyres. They'll take several corners to scrub up to the condition they were.
That was really attacking driving. Got alongside into the final corner, had a little look in turn 1, ran wide at turn 2, was prepared to attack, and as they were coming down through the sweepers at turns 3, 4 and 5, Moritz Krantz was just, it was like he was prepared to take more out of his tyres, was pushing, but put himself on the outside at turn 3. That redefines diminishing returns. Great little scrap though.
It was. I wonder whether there was some contact actually as they just hit the apex at turn 14. And then the second attempt from Moritz Krantz was to go to the outside. I wonder how that will be read by those in race control from Jean Glorieux. Meanwhile,
talking of race control, team manager of the driver in second place, Nicolas Morlini, to race control. Not sometime in the future, immediately please. So don't know what that's about. Well, of course I can have a guess. Took the lead of the race and rejoined the circuit, but then ceded that lead. One has to presume that when he let Rory Penttinen back in front, having run off the circuit out of, well, between turn 1 and turn 2 to take the lead, that he handed it back, but maybe there was something in the procedure. We'll wait and find out, but race team chiefs do need their running shoes on.
They do.
Lose no time when going to see race control.
It really depends on which end of the pit lane you are. It's either a short walk or you have to go from one building to another, because it's split pits here at Paul Ricard, with the in and out back to the paddock route separating the two. Rinaldi Racing running in 17th position. Steve Parrow doing the defending on Stefan Adler, and Adler had been caught up in the GT3 traffic initially, but the greater straight line speed from his P3 now means he is sufficiently ahead of Rino Mastronardi. It's about a couple of seconds. Also the fight is on for 5th place between Tony Wells and a recovering Moritz Krantz. He lost the car out of turn 5 not too long ago, having been sort of forced there by Jean Glorieux. It's taken a while to clean the tyres, but he's now right on the back of the Tony Wells driven car from Nielsen Racing.
But let's hope desperation doesn't start to colour his point of view. He certainly gave it a real lick. Moritz Krantz didn't manage to get past Glorieux. Another person who's got to go to race control is team manager of car number 11. And just to let you know who that is, it's Racing Experience. It's Yuri Wagner. My guess there is Yuri, I saw at the back of the P3 pack, jinked, to my eye, I'm fairly sure it was his car, jinked off the circuit on the start, on the run down the start line. And maybe made a good start, maybe he jumped the start, but certainly I saw a car that was largely red and black, as is his Racing Experience car, at the side of the circuit at the start. But then we will wait for further confirmation, but suddenly the door will be a swing door at race control, because people going in and out.
Matchel Schneider, Geoffrey Donada for CD Sport just out of view, but focusing understandably on this fight between Tony Wells and Moritz Krantz. It is an all Duquesne M30 affair as well, with the Ligier of Maurice Smith just 4 or 5 car lengths further up the road. So the possibility for these two Duquesnes to improve maybe into the top 4, but there is a gap emerging now between Nicolas Morlini and Jean Glorieux. Glorieux's got about 5 seconds to find on effectively the top 2, because Penttinen and Morlini circulating with a second between them.
Yeah, Glorieux just didn't seem to have the pace in the best of the Duquesnes to live with the Ligiers at the front. Certainly he was trouble being pushed really hard by Moritz Krantz. Don't know if it took a bit of life out of his tyres, but Rory Penttinen and Nicolas Morlini in this early stage of the race, they have the pace, and in fact the gap from first to second is 1.25 seconds, second to third is over 5 seconds, so the lead duo pulling ever further clear, and the driver who could be with them but for that error is Moritz Krantz, and he's still stuck behind Tony Wells, getting a little bit closer up the Mistral Straight. He's got Alexander Matchel, the black, yellow and bright green Duquesne from Rinaldi Racing, new to prototype racing this year. He's getting in the mix. He'll be watching and learning as they get up the Mistral. past the fabulous building that houses an amazing collection of cars halfway up the straight, and then to Signe at the top. And the car leading into that group is Maurice Smith, 4th place for Cool Racing. And the move about to be made into double droite, very nicely done from Moritz Krantz. And it must be said that Tony Wells realised he was beaten, was slightly compromised there, Johnny, up into Signe, and backed out of it, let the move happen.
Yeah, Moritz Krantz, 33 years old, from Wittlich in Germany. 2nd season in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. This has been a good drive from him so far, and I think, well, we have yet to have a message on the screen to suggest that the incident involving him and Jean Glorieux will be looked back at again. And maybe the Belgian was fighting his territory perfectly within his rights, but it meant that Moritz Krantz, the car that will be handed over to Gilles Magnus in due course, is somewhat behind the 8-ball. But a good little move there, darting up the inside into the double droite at turn 9 to get one of those places lost back again.
Yeah, certainly there was a little twitch there from Tony Wells, had to come off the power a little bit, and I think just with the great momentum, Moritz Krantz swept by. So his next target is now Maurice Smith. He's just under half a second down on him at the start of this lap. Great little battle for 8th position. Number 24, United Autosport's Daniel Snyder, and Geoffrey Denarder tucked in behind with that distinctive black front wing and white wing on the other side. Down through turns 3, 4 and 5. Well, we know there's not much space down there. We saw Moritz Krantz confirming that when he tried to get 3rd place from Jean Glorieux. It didn't work, but you've got to be patient, and it's all about coming out of this corner, turn 6, and a wonderful sweep through turn 7. If you can get the power down early, you can carry it up the straight. But in fact, in that little battle, Daniel Schneider did a better job than Geoffrey Denarder.
Denarder's made ground. He started, or in the early stages, he was 11th. 2 more places gained now, as here comes Moritz Krantz to not only make 1 position, but possibly 2 before the end of the lap, because at the inside of Maurice Smith he goes at senior corner. That's full commitment, and bags 5th place, as a 4th place rather, as a result. So Krantz now ahead of the 2nd of the Cool Racing cars. Nicola Molini a long way up the road in 2nd position, but Maurice Smith had no answer to that, and Tony Wells might think, well, I fancy a bit of that as well. Maybe senior corner the best place to do it.
May well be. Don't forget the first 4 qualifiers, including Maurice Krantz, were the pick of the field. They were covered by about 0.26 of a second in qualifying very, very quick fire. Don't forget, only a 15-minute session, but when it comes to the race, that pace seems true, because Moritz Krantz, having fallen from fighting for 3rd place back to 6th, he's now back up to 4th, but he's got a big tiny gap, 7.5 seconds to close on Jean Glorieux. He takes some of it because his pace is really strong, but that's going to be a big ask. But at least he's getting back towards the podium positions. 2 cars now attacking. Oh, and a spin in the background for the Rinaldi racing car. Nearly cleaned out Tony Wells in the process. That was Alexander Matschel misjudging his braking point. The 37's issue was actually a jump start. 2nd place car is going to have to do a drive-through because it was judged to be out of position. What happened to Matschel? Hit the brakes as he did a lap ago, and the thing just spun around with no warning whatsoever. Briefly cut out as well because he lost the headlights, then it fired back into life. Now 37 should be behind Rory Penttinen, and it was ahead at the start line. That's pretty clear cut, Bruce. That's what we call basic, a rolling start. You're in 2nd position, your nose has to be behind. He was about 1/3 of a car length to the good, or to the bad, so it proved. But again, that moment for Alexander Matschel, I think he got a little bit too close to Tony Wells going into turn 1 and just panicked. But anyhow, great. You know, you tried spinning a P3 car between a couple of cones, did it beautifully.
True enough, yes. Autocross may be his future, Alexander Matschel. Maybe it was the dirty air though as well. Got close to the back of Tony Wells' car. All of a sudden the airflow's completely different across your car. Didn't have the rear traction as from a long way back. The CD Sport car goes for a move on number 24, Daniel Schneider, and that's Geoffrey Denarder, who's been following Schneider for the last few laps and obviously picked that place as a weak point maybe for Schneider, the Brazilian. And Geoffrey Denarder wasting no time there to get 8th position. Plenty of overtaking going on, some attempted and not quite coming off. Meanwhile, Michel Broniszewski versus Nico Leutwiler. Nicky Leutwiler in the TFT Porsche has been spending much of this early race gathering positions lost initially.
Yeah, well, the fact he's onto the tail of Bronicheski, don't forget, Bronicheski, he's 3.5 seconds down on Rino Mastronardi, but I think it's been really impressive from Leutwiler. Didn't see why he had a moment towards the end of that opening lap, but he's hunted this lot down, and don't forget he was on the front row of the imaginary grid for the GT class cars, but great to have a Porsche in the mix, looks fabulous. And its performance benefits come at different points on the circuit to Bronicheski, but Bronicheski's been racing Ferraris for a good half dozen years now, and he's got a really strong handle on them, but he's been made to work very hard. It must be said, the race leader in the GT class, Rino Mastronardi, started last. The fact he's hanging onto the tail of Steve Parrow and Stefan Adler in their P3 cars is massive accolade to Mastronardi.
No, it certainly is. And now some more pressure from Geoffrey Denarder on a recovering Alexander Matchell. That dramatic spin at turn 1 has put the Rinaldi Racing number 55 Duqueine behind time. And Geoffrey Denarder in his Ligier looking for an opportunity. Well, some have chosen Senior as a good place to get by. Could be close enough by the end of the Mistral Straight.
Well, wait and see. Another person in trouble. We knew that the team manager of car number 11 had to go to race control. That was racing experience, and Yuri Wagner did do what I thought. I saw him jinking out off the starting grid. He's being pinged for a jump start, and actually, while you're here, team manager, let's do him for overtaking beyond the track limits. Probably actually the same move. Jink off the circuit, overtake. You're definitely outside the white line.
Yeah.
But Denarder really troubling Alexander Matchell. Matchell again just moved across from GT cars after years doing that in Europe and in Asia, but settling in. One little glitch in that run. But I think he's making a really good fist of it for Rinaldi Racing, and Rinaldi Racing as a team as well, new to prototype racing, so they're learning as they go. But Geoffrey Denarder, it's been a really strong run for him, and he's getting very close indeed as he tries to take that 7th position from Matchell. But for now, the CD Sport car, well, he's going to have to wait a lap longer, but someone not looking a lap longer is Leutwiler. Out of double track, and he's moved up to 2nd place in the GT class.
Yeah, great overtake that, and bided his time, picked the opportunity, through into 2nd. Geoffrey Denarder may be the only exception in the sense that he's not a bronze to start the race, so they've installed their silver rated driver at CD Sport, and it's making quick work of some overtakes early on. Jacques Wolf, the bronze, still to come. As again Denarder had a little think about a move at the inside of turn 5, the end of that sequence of right and left and right corners in quick succession, through the kink onto the Mistral, and again it's all about getting a good run and a tow potentially for the CD Sport car.
Well, he looked better over the curbs. He had a bit more speed coming as he turned into turn 7, carried it through the corner. He's now, half a car length down on, but really picking up a fantastic tow from Matchell. But towards the end of the straight, if anything, Matchell should be having the orange and white and black car closer, but it isn't this time. He's somehow managed to eke out the whole car length. We're not talking a lot.
No, this is the part of the track that Geoffrey Denarder really does favour. Came from a long way back for an overtake into the right-hander at 9 a moment or 2 ago. Can't make it work though on Matchell there. There are 2 slow-speed corners coming up before the end of the lap, and Denarder just sowing that seed of doubt with a very unusual line to head now into Garlabat. He's within touching distance of that radically liveried Rinaldi Racing car number 55. Still nothing between them. Will he come from a long way back here maybe? No, thought about it, but I think he stood to lose far more than he might have gained there. Well,
a person who's really enjoying the battle is Daniel Schneider. He lost his battle to Denarder, but now he's watching exactly the moves that were put on him being put on Matchell. Matchell holding on. One thing I just wanted to point out, last time around, fastest lap of anybody was Moritz Krantz. Cool Racing Nicola Malini, of course, had just dropped out of 3rd place. He's come in to serve that drive-through penalty. So Jean Gloria up into 2nd place, but he's 11 seconds down on Rory Penttinen, and Penttinen just banged in the fastest first sector of anybody. But Moritz Krantz, he's just bear in mind, 2.5 seconds, 2.7 seconds down on Gloria. Not so long ago, that was nearly 5 seconds. So Krantz has got his tail right up. He's going to be catching Gloria within 2 laps, I reckon.
Also in for a stop, I noticed the racing experience car of Yuri Wagner, and can't easily explain that one.
I can, because that was the jump start as well. That was the 2nd car that got pinged for a jump start. So.
Yeah, perfect, fine, thank you. So 23 seconds a drive-through here at Ricard, looking for about the same for the racing experience car. It is exactly that. So affects them, but not hugely across a 2-hour race. but you need to obviously penalise any advantage that might be scored from the get-go. You have to be in order from the qualification earlier on in the day. CD Sport Car feinting to the inside at turn 9 again, still attacking Alexander Matchel, who's keeping his elbows out very nicely as the Ligier Geoffrey Denarder clatters the curb there, needing to be careful because at close quarters behind now is Daniel Schneider for United Autosports.
Well, it was a mistake there from Denarder. He's now not on the tail of Alexander Matchel. He ran too deep into the corner and was pushing wide, and Daniel Schneider's been watching him for a number of laps. He won't be happy that he was passed, but Denarder was easy at passing him. I'm beginning to wonder if Denarder, who's been pushing so hard, has been, how should you say, robbed the piggy bank, the bank of tyre life.
Seen it happen many times before. You push like crazy, get the performance, but then that really does mean you've not a lot of Michelin tyre to lean on latterly in your stint. Let's see how that one unfolds, but if Denarder's pace drops off now, probably a likely explanation. Almost at the end of the first half an hour, and now a recovering Nicola Molini, fresh from his drive-through, finds himself on the gearbox of Tony Wells. This is the battle for 5th and 6th, therefore, but Molini looking much quicker than the man from Middlesbrough.
Well, don't forget he's passed him before, and I'm sure he's going to pass him again, because plenty of speed from Molini for Cool Racing. Winner last time out at Spa-Francorchamps. He'll be frustrated with what's happened, but he was the driver that stuck the nose of his car in front of Rory Penton and the pole man on the run down, the rolling start down to that start line. Elementary mistake, unfortunately, but the pace to get back towards the podium is definitely within his hands. So Cool Racing about to gain another position. Will the nose be in front up the inside? Yes, it is. So Tony Wells back one more position.
And Rino Mastronardi continues to set very quick times in the GT3 category. Just done a category best again there, 156.155. He's extending the gap back to Nicky Leutwiler and his Porsche to 6.3 seconds. Mightily impressive from the championship leader, who will become the lone championship leader in the absence of regular teammate Jacopo Piccini here in France.
Well, we really need to start watching the little battle for second place, because Jean Gloria, I'm afraid his 5-second advantage is down to 0.7 of a second. Moritz Krantz is really just taking chunks of time out of him, so it's probably going to be Ligier, Duquesne, but with a different Duquesne in second place, because Krantz is catching Gloria just as that fabulous battle is rejoined with Geoffrey Denarder all over the tail of Alexander Matchel. But first place, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, Rory Penton a dozen seconds to the good.
Yeah, very good opening stint from the Finn, as Denarder might have another opportunity into turn 1. Big wiggle there from Matchel as he just about found the grip through turn 1 and the right-hander at turn 2. Then this short, sharp straight towards a tricky section of track, the 3, 4 and 5. Again, Denarder slightly tighter line on the entry, and again exiting turn 4. So despite him pushing hard on the tyres, that car seems more manoeuvrable, I would say, the CD Sport example, than the Matchel Duquesne.
Matchel's driving it in quite a different style. It's actually almost as though he's man from GTs. He's driving a prototype like a prototype should be driven, and Geoffrey Denarder is using much more of a GT style. Being a little rougher, but in the way he's just trying to unsettle Matchel. Matchel, it's almost like, I'm driving a prototype now, I have to be super smooth, and he's sticking to his lines very, very nicely indeed. But Denarder, well, he's not prepared to just concentrate on passing on the left. He'll try the right as well.
Why not? If the opportunity is there, and Matchel presumably will defend initially, but can't then in the second time. And in the background, Schneider's wide. Here is Denarder's opportunity. He's just about got the inside line, caught a less grippy part of the track, but that won't matter. Geoffrey Denarder ahead and into 7th position. And in the background, as I said, Daniel Schneider losing grip on the exit of senior corner, as we now turn our attention to the Inter-Duquesne battle. Two very different teams, though. DKR Engineering second, and John Gloria ahead of Moritz Krantz, who was trying this move about 15 minutes or so ago to get by the Belgian. Well,
he's moved it very quickly indeed, and then it's Cool Racing in 4th and 5th positions with Nicola Molini. Don't forget, he's the driver who led the race, albeit not correctly, away from the start line. He's right on the tail now of Maurice Smith. They're a dozen seconds down on this great little battle for second place. It's going to be interesting to see. Gloria's being very, very defensive. His right to do so, but certainly I would expect a move to be made at the end of the Mistral Straight. Through turn 6 they go, now to turn 7. Who's going to get the better exit onto the infield straight? Looks pretty good exit there from the driver in third place, Moritz Krantz. He's going to use what toe he can all the way up the straight towards Signen. Then we're going to see how brave he is, and certainly it must be said, a driver who tries to overtake round the outside into turn 3 is either brave or that other one.
Indeed. Jean Gloria is probably thinking, I thought I got rid of this guy, and he's back again, and even more desperate to get in front. Senior corner won't be the opportunity for Krantz, but he can get the inside line into the next one. Double Drat, and he gets it into the right-hander at turn 9. That was all set up through the very fast right-hander at Senior. Put Gloria off his stride, and he couldn't leap across to the right-hand side of the track to defend.
It's such a difficult place to pass. If you drive around the circuit, even watching on television, there seems to be space abounding, but it absolutely diminishes when you come up and you start turning into, the fastest point on the circuit. You're turning in, but Krantz just seemed to have all the grip he wanted, whereas going on a line you thought would be perfectly fast. No answer from Jean Gloria.
Now the two Cool Racing cars have found one another, and what's happened to the one with the green door mirrors, Maurice Smith?
Well, he's just been over. He was caught very quickly by Nicola Molini, and Nicola was half a second down at the start of the lap. Now, rain tires being looked at on terra firma. Lap times have been pretty handy at the moment, so I don't really... Well, looking at number 26, swinging the tail around, Rory Penttinen. Is it getting a little bit wet? But we've got Jean Gloria back into the pits.
And wet tyres being offered, surely. Yes, they are.
That would also explain why he wasn't so confident going through Scene and ceded that second place. Maybe he'd already made the decision at that point, maybe you're slightly less brave. I'm coming in this lap because I've told you I need wet weather tyres, but certainly didn't seem to have the grip or the confidence through Scene, and that's why Moritz Krantz up into second place all over again. So for DKR Engineering, frustrating, but it may yet prove a very, very good stroke. Not so long ago there was a thing on the screen saying you may now turn off your rain lights. I was thinking it's getting brighter, it's getting drier, but so maybe a little rain flurry has arrived.
Well, that stop for DKR can't count as one of their two mandatory stops, because remember they need to do the long one 150 seconds before the hour mark, and that's generally where people do their driver change as well. 50-minute minimum drive time these days in Michelin Le Mans Cup. What happened a moment or two ago between 7 Tony Wells and the Geoffrey Donata car? Well, Wells went wide out of turn 5 and the door was well and truly left open for Geoffrey Donata to dart through. So that puts the CD Sport Ligier up to 5th now. To finish the point about the pit stops just briefly, the short one must come in the last 20 minutes, so we're not at that phase at all yet. They have decided at DKR to take an extra stop, but the wet weather tyres might pay dividends come the checkered flag.
I haven't talked too much about Rory Penttinen. He's had a quiet race since the opening lap, since he got back in front of Nicola Molini. Molini's worked his way back from 6th after the drive-through up to 3rd. He needs to find 9 seconds to catch Moritz Krantz, but Moritz is 16 seconds down on Penttinen. It's so unusual to have a driver enjoying this much dominance. Certainly some of those behind him have had their problems with drive-through penalties and assorted mishaps, but the Finn hasn't put a wheel wrong.
John Schaumann now getting ahead of Rob Hodes in the number 10 car. Schaumann in the 23 United Autosports machine drives a Ligier and is trying to force enough time, as much time between he and Rod Hodes. Something not right with Hodes' car, rather. Looks very, very slow. There's a spin in the background as well, so that's an indication that the track's getting very damp indeed. That is the car rejoining on wet weather tyres, Jean Gloria.
You know what I was about to say next? I was about to say, I'm just going to keep an eye on Jean Gloria's times. Now he's on wet weather tyres.
Now, was there some contact, actually, between his car and the... And that was that... the Stefan Adler car.
I think it could be bright red. So we're getting GT visitors to the pits as well, deciding that they would like some wet weather tyres, and that's car number 50 coming to a halt, and that's John Hartshorn, who is running at the tail of the field. Car 21 under investigation for an incident at turn 1 at the start of the race. And car 21 is Moritz Krantz. He ran wide in the background in his Mulner Motorsport car. He was about 4th place, do you remember, between turns 1 and 2?
Yes.
I thought it was in avoidance of Morlini and Penttinen having that little clash that put Morlini slightly onto the painted lines.
They weren't ready at Kessel Racing for this stop that John presumably got the message to do, but the wet weather tyres weren't right by the car, so some confusion. It's going to take a fairly long time this. We're still not in the window for this to be the longer stop either, and no hint of a driver change. They would really like to do their 150-second stop now, which would rather eclipse the clumsy tyre change. There's a car facing the wrong way at the start of the Mistral straight, which is the 12 machine, Team Virage, and Steve Brooks. So has he lost it on some wet curbing, maybe on the right-hand side? He's come through the fast left-hand kink, and yes, this is exactly what happened to Michael Fassbender in ELMS qualifying. Amazingly though, no, he didn't quite keep it out of the wall. He's nosed in gently. You know, driving away, I wouldn't have said that car had any contact at all, but he did catch the tyre barrier.
Well, couldn't quite see, there might have been just a little bit of space that he managed to swing that nose around in, but certainly as he drove away, it looked unharmed. Conditions must be changing, looking for spots on the screen. We're seeing windscreen wipers starting to go now, and certainly looking for a replay of something. Oh yes, definitely wetter. Looking in the background, looking at drivers twitching. Now, which of the Ferraris is that? Of the Iron Lynx Ferraris? Wasn't
77.
Was it?
No, it's the other car, Claudio Schiavone. Now one stopped in the middle of the track. This is an LMP3 car, stopped right at turn 4.
Lights off, car number 27, that's Christoph Kress. Had his moment coming down into turn 3. Looks like he had it under control, went on the blue stripy lines, around it rotated. I think in 3 and 4 it's particularly tricky. We've just seen Claudio Schiavone going on there. So down from the start line, you descend through those sweeping S's 3, 4 and 5, but with the number of cars going off there, I think we're going to have a very busy pit lane shortly, and then I'll keep an eye on John Glorio's pace. I'd like to see a replay of that incident. I'm fairly sure you were right that he could have been given a little clip up the rear.
Yeah, by the car that looked very much like the EDEC Sport car of Stefan Adler. That was the 67 car of Murad Sultanov spinning. Meanwhile, the race leader is really struggling to find the traction right now. 15.7 seconds is still Rory Penttinen's lead, though, over Moritz Krantz, who's proven himself to be no slouch in the opening 40 minutes very nearly of this race.
Lap pace has dropped away by about 6 seconds for the pace setters. That is how wet it is. But I think for a lot of these drivers, they're saying, can I eke it out for a few more laps? That's when you start doing the maths. And from the start line down towards the bottom part of the circuit, Penttinen went straight on at turn 1. Dakar, the race leader, just could not turn in. So what doesn't look obvious on screen, it's suddenly, as you get past the pits, much, much wetter.
And it's very delicate stuff coming out of turn 7 and onto the Mistral. So yeah, to illustrate the drop-off in pace, that was a lap 2 minutes 1 second for Rory Penttinen. His best, a 1:52. So we're almost 10 seconds slower than the ultimate dry speed. Moritz Krantz, kind of in the same ballpark, just over 2 minutes last time around. And an absolute best of a 1:52. He holds the fastest lap, 1:52.0. Meanwhile, GT3s relying more so on their superior mechanical grip, so they're better in the rain theoretically. Still a 2:02 it was from Rino Masnardi, who leads GT3, and he hangs on to the fastest lap in that category as well. A pit stop for 24, so that is Daniel Schneider coming in. Still haven't got anywhere close to a 50-minute drive time yet. That's your minimum for driver 1, whether they be bronze, silver or gold.
That bottom part of the circuit, drivers trying to carry their speed through the sweepers down from turn 2, but 3, 4 and 5. A lot of them never even get to 4 because they've gone wide and continued onto the circuit further down the slope, and that was Yuri Wagner, already in problems for a jump start, so second problem for him. And get this, we're just starting to get cars coming into the pits. We've already got one pinged for speeding in the pit lane, and unfortunately for Steve Parrow, he is the man for that. So penalties to be coming, and I thought going off the track, but it was the Porsche that got up to second place in the GT class as the race leader Rino Mastronardi in the GT class carried on to another lap. But diving into the pits, Niki Leutwiler, we know he's got pace. We also know he's got Julian Andlauer, last year's German Porsche Cup champion, to take over from him. So it's a car that could be going places.
Rino Mastronardi, with his driving talents struggling at times. The racing experience car has now ground to a halt. That had an off-track moment not too long ago. I think at turn 3, and maybe on the very next lap as it's reached turn 7, it hasn't fired back into life. So that's Juri Wagner, who rejoined via the little runoff route, but 3 corners later can't power his way down the Mistral. Yeah, didn't get any further than going straight on at turn 4. So this is the inside of the kink at 7. Now he's safely off the track, that whole area being covered by double waved yellows. We wait to see whether there's going to be a full neutralisation of the race.
Yeah, double waved yellow, turn 7, but still seemed to have life. The windscreen wiper was still going, the lights were still on, so I don't think it's gone switched off, but it's certainly driven off. But a car that has had its share of problems for Juri Wagner with those penalties. Yellow flag, but a lot of the drivers right now aren't thinking of overtaking, they're thinking of staying on the track. And as I say that, even halfway through saying that, yet another tumbler, but nothing untoward. No. As number 5 comes back onto the circuit, that's Michael Jensen. Haven't really talked much about him. He's had a quiet race up until that point. Yeah,
and we're chuckling purely because we're just not really sure when a car is next to leave the track, and these are such trying conditions. It's not a reflection on the driver ability of any of these. It's so treacherous. Most of them are fairly early on in their racing career, and they'll remember this race for a long, long time to come. It's huge for experience. It's a matter of survival, really. Just get it to the point where you can hand it over to your silver or gold graded driver and probably find they can do no better.
Right, well, Tony Wells is now leading the race. Number 7, Nielsen Racing, Duquesne at the top, but pretty much everyone bar one other person have come in the pits, and Rob Hodes has stayed out in the other car from the same team. Maybe they're saying, can I come in? Haven't got any tyres ready. But certainly staying out, but I think it's clearly the wrong thing to do. You need to be in the pits, you need to be putting wet weather tyres on. Rinaldi Racing rejoined, that would be Alexander Matchell. He's had a strong race, and there's a car spinning. Which of the Nielsen Racing cars is that? Is that our race leader? Was he given a helping hand? Well, more than a helping hand for Tony Wells, who was probably thinking about maybe pitting, and if he wasn't, he should have been, but unfortunately given a tip around there.
Not sure which one of the United cars that was. I thought it was 23, but I'd like another look at that. John Schauman was on an out lap and is in the final sector.
Number
the three's off as well.
It's not been their day. So this is the car that's had 2 incidents. DKR Engineering Jean Gloria, the first of the runners to come in and get weather tyres, and was about a third of a lap into the stint of the wet rubber, and was then given a wrap up the back, and then all on his own. And I really have sympathy for Tony Wells there, because
two moments in one there. Another Nielsen car
in the background.
Tony Wells again. If not, it was the 10 of Rob Hodes. This is the opportunity we get to see. It was Hodes by the looks of things, battling with Motorsport 98, losing it on its own, and the 98 car of Eric de Donker amazingly missing a spinning Rod Hodes. But at the other side of the track, Jean Gloria was having his own moment at turn 7.
Well, it's good to see that Tony Wells has gone into the pit lane. This team, Nielsen Racing, the last to call their car. But last time around, of course, he was appreciably slower than the United Autosports car that was coming up behind him, because that was on wet weather tyres and he wasn't. And the carcass, well, you can see daylight between the wheel rim and the tyre, which to my untrained eye is not a good thing. But for Tony Wells, it was definitely a lap too long.
Well, that's presumably from the contact there as well.
Absolutely, as well.
With the United Autosports car. Because we had Nielsen cars spinning virtually on the same lap, but Tony Wells was given a helping hand into that spin, whereas Rob Hodes lost it at turn 5 on his own. But with turn 5 practically an ice rink now, especially if you're on the wrong tyres.
Yeah, confirmation it was John Schauman in behind, but the closing speed would have been sufficient, because for Schauman he had newfound grip that he certainly didn't have when he was still on the dry weather tyres, and just caught out and clipping Tony Wells. And it's so tricky if you're still out there on slicks and everyone else is on wet weather tyres. Another moment just being shown there, because Alexander Matchell happily now on groove tyres, able to work his way past with great vitesse. So Rory Penttinen, remember him? Leading the race, and he's now leading the race. He was leading by 16 seconds over Nicola Molini. He's now leading by 16 seconds over Nicola Molini. But don't forget, Molini had that drive through the pits as well, a drive through penalty. So first and second are now still first and second. But one's had a race that's almost by the textbook, and the other's had one filled with problems. That's Morlini, the Swiss driver for Cool Racing. Cool Racing, though, second and third, looking good for them.
It certainly is, when probably the story could have been a lot different earlier on. Discussion down at, which team is this? Looking for some IDs on the race suits, but there wasn't any immediately obvious. Another off-track moment, that is for Team Virage, I think, car 12. Yep, coming out of turn 11. Bumping over the curbs, a loss of traction once again. We've seen plenty of that so far, and there's spray now affecting visibility if you are in traffic.
Right, we eventually identified it's John Schaumann as the driver at car number 23, United Autosports, and his team manager up to race control immediately. Of course, he spun the race leader, Tony Wells, who was on dry weather tyres on a very much a wet track and pussyfooting his way around Rory Penttinen, going wide out of turn 7, but didn't panic, kept it in a straight line, didn't try and hoik it back onto the circuit, was able to continue on his way. But we have seen drivers going off to stage left, not necessarily chased by a bear, but certainly for Rory Penttinen, cool head, running 1, 2, 3, 4 wheels over the track and beyond, but didn't panic, didn't try and turn back onto the track too quickly, eased it back on, which is the right thing to do, just as your brain's saying, get it back on the track, get it back on the track.
Yeah, no sudden movements. I think the key to that was that he cleared the red and white painted surface and found the high friction paint, the other side, which has sort of granules in it and provides lots of extra grip. So the blue stripe's generally good, the red and white curbing not so good. And just speak to Michael Fassbender about that in the ELMS qualifying. Nicolas Lapierre of Cool Racing still looking on. He's not due to be taking part in this race, but he is obviously taking an active interest because they're 2 cars on position nicely, second and third. Also, we're trying to work out whether it's going to rain or stop raining in the near future.
Well, you can tell he's totally involved. He's standing with rain dripping off the awning on the very, very wide pit wall. It's the best pit wall in motor racing, this one, with a great big grass verge behind it, plenty of space, but he's standing there just absorbed in what he's seeing on the screen, doesn't want to miss any chance to get some information across the drivers. But looking at the circuit now, the headlights are on full, there's spray coming up, and conditions are full interesting, as I think we could call them.
They're certainly grabbing people's attention. Lights flashing on the DKR engineering machine, which sadly is down in 8th place for the current championship leaders.
Now, just as visibility is getting harder and harder, there's a report there may be debris on the Mistral straight.
Oh, there is.
Halfway up,
no, I saw that,
level with the chicane. So if you're running up in catching another driver who's maybe still learning how hard to push on these wet weather tyres, and you jink out, that could be a big problem. So it's been identified. The message will be transmitted to the drivers by the teams, because that could make things very tricky indeed. But right now it's a case of survival in a way for these drivers, just trying to work out how hard they can push on the wet weather tyres. Jean Gloria, after a couple of moments, seems to be sort of getting it together again, and he's dropping the Dodonka car quite easily. But you can just see how it really is on a knife edge. As I say that, turning into turn 13, the Gloria twitching away.
Very nearly doesn't have the turning circle to get through 14, Virage Dupont, because he approached it at such a crazy angle. Yeah, I think it's maybe the skin of the inside of a wheel arch that has ended up on the track, because the same lap that Penttinen ran wide onto the Mistral, one of the cars in and around him clipped that bit of debris, and it's now bouncing back and forth left and right on the track depending on who gets it next. Really needs someone to fully boot it clear, but warning on the screen at this stage, no need to throw the full course yellow in order to retrieve that. It's fairly lightweight bodywork, I would say, that has found its way there from, not sure whether it's a prototype or a GT, kind of doesn't matter, but everyone should be aware of that now.
First place to second place is closing down. It was Penttinen leading by 16 seconds. Okay, he had that slow lap when he had that moment going onto the Mistral straight, but now it's down to 11.5 seconds. Morlini's on a massive charge for Cool Racing. That's car number 37. But there is a lot of traffic around the circuit. Morlini just about to complete another lap. He's got a car in front of him, but he's worked his way through a good gaggle. He should be able to pick that off by turn 1. Then he's got a clear run to go off through the race leader. He's halfway down the start-finish straight, and race leader Penttinen just turning out of turn 2 at the moment.
Still a little bit of debris on the track there. I think what was one chunk of bodywork has been split into several parts now, which will make recovery even more difficult. and the potential for punctures later on, of course, as well, if anybody is picking up shards of carbon fibre. It never rains, but it pours for DKR Engineering, Bruce Jones.
You saw me shaking my head. I was thinking for DKR Engineering, we saw Jean Gloria going for a spin. People have been checking the replays. It wasn't any contact, but now they're being done, well, not done, under investigation for a pit stop infringement. So we saw, what, 2 spins in 1 lap? And then this. And to say that we expect him at the front of the field, he's down in 7th place, it could well be getting a whole lot worse. Yeah,
and if you were confused there with the DKR gang being in front of a number 4 car, that's not entered in this race. That's the ELMS car, but they're operating remotely outside their ELMS garage. Laurence Hoare still to come in that machine. It's getting very close indeed for 1 or 2 machines looking to unlap themselves on Rory Penttinen. So who's in 23? John Showerman still at the wheel of that, but got pretty tight. That was probably Penttinen sticking a lap on Showerman, but he got close again to reversing those positions as they headed towards senior corner.
We are at 25 seconds to full course yellow.
Now that's interesting, because we're also about 25 seconds away from the pit stop window opening, effectively, at the end of 50 minutes drive time for our opening drivers.
Just having a little check.
Remember the radio.
Rob Hodes.
Seconds to full course yellow. 10 seconds to full course yellow.
Rob Hodes is still out on his drive with the tyres.
3.
Hasn't yet pitted.
No.
Wow.
1.
No, you're right.
Full
19th place.
We are under full course yellow.
So this is kind of perfect timing to make you stop, unless everybody stops under full course yellow, and you won't get any sort of an advantage.
To the track. We are going to recover some debris at several points of the track. We're going to pick up debris at several points of the track.
Okay, so a chance not only to clear Mistral, but also other corners, as our first pit stopper is Nicola Molini from second position.
From second place. We saw Rory Penttinen go round the final corner. It was just the wrong time for him, or else he hesitates, but he's going for another further lap behind in this full course yellow period. It's got to come in next time around.
Has to, yeah, because otherwise won't get the advantage of this caution period, and all of a sudden a race leader with a 12, 13, sometimes 15 second advantage going to kiss goodbye to that, because Molini's pitting with everybody else at a much reduced speed. Full course yellow is an 80 km/h speed limit. Also provides opportunity for the number 11 Racing Experienced LMP3 car to be recovered as well. As here comes Rob Hodes then, and we're expecting this car still to be on slick tyres. Unbelievably, it is, you're right. Just saw through the hole there on the front left corner. That's a spectacular drive from Rob Hodes in terms of car control. I know he had that spin at turn 5, but he didn't hit anything crucially. I know he's lost time as well, come in from 19th, but hasn't made a pit stop, and they can now take their time as to which tyres they're going to offer to car 10. This is a 150-second pit stop from in to out, and this is where it's so important to know where your garage is in relation to the outgoing timing loop. You don't want to release the car too early.
It'd be so interesting to hear from someone who stayed right to the bitter end on slick tyres. It'd be great to hear from Rob Hodes, who sort of obviously came in the pits and went, "Hi guys, remember me?"
Yeah.
I haven't visited.
Real problems getting that front left off, though, I notice. I hope that's not going to bite them. And it's still not come off yet, so they're now having to locate another wheel gun. So,
and another thing at this point, going around the track at full course yellow pace, Rory Penttinen is only now just past the point where the debris was, halfway up the Mistral straight. His other pit stops all but completed.
Here we go, wheel gun number 2 trying to remove the front left. That is not shifting. And sometimes, whether it's cross-threading, whether it's just excessive heat through the hub, the two metals become bonded. I know what. Oh, it's off. Thank goodness for that. But sometimes the nut is deliberately softer metal than the spoke, if you like, the end of the hub, and it doesn't happen too often, that problem. But I have seen circular saws necessary in the past in order to separate wheels from cars.
Absolutely. So in a 24-hour race, you just have to keep on going. But in a race like this, only 2 hours, the consequences of the delay is so much sharper. Race leader Rory Penttinen halfway between the turn at Seine and the Double Droite, as his rivals have made their pit stops and going back out. But this full course yellow warm-up period continues, and Rory Penttinen surely will be in very soon indeed, getting ready to receive him. And Jean Glorieux is in, number 3, but that's a car that's had every problem going, it must be said. And that'll be handed over nice and tidily to Lawrence Hoare. Lawrence was ready some while ago, but they were just waiting, and the moment didn't come until now. But they've got the clear pit lane.
Oh, what happened to Rory Penttinen a moment or two ago? Again, he takes the wide line out onto the Mistral. This is just a look back on earlier events in the race, though, and prior to the full course yellow. I suppose this interval does give us opportunity to have a little look at various problems, including for Alexander Matchell, who was entering turn 1 backwards. That's going to grab his attention. Amazingly, it just pirouetted it to face the right direction. Same goes almost for Jean Glorieux. Very nearly beached on the curb there, but we reckon no contact with the number 3 car to put that into a spin. It was all of his own making. Treaded tyres being bolted onto the number 3. Can only go that way right now. There's too much wet weather out there. Both it's raining, but also the track surface is going to take some time to dry up as well. I think possibly the rain is lighter than it was earlier. We're now fully ensconced in the pit lane window. Not strictly a window, it's determined by the drive times, and that has been decreased to 50 minutes because of the latest problems with the LMP3 engine. So just to make sure that the engine can do the distance, we go back to green now, but there are shorter drive times because of that.
Number 2 Porsche, 6th place overall, hasn't made a pit stop, and it's staying out on the circuit. Nicky Leutwiler continues out there. Our race leader, Rory Penttinen, has come in to make his pit stop, is serving his pit stop, but he's doing so when the circuit is, when it's green out on the track. So that lead he had of 11.5 seconds is going to be gobbled up very, very quickly indeed. Nick Adcock waiting to take over from Michael Jensen. They are also losing time in the pits with that full course yellow having been cleared now, but some of the speeds under full course yellow under investigation. Again, it's a standard procedure, but drivers absolutely have to stick by the enforced limits. They don't always, majority of these drivers will be.
Now there's a 59-second stop next to Rino Mastronardi and his number 8 Ferrari. He'll have to come in again because that's not long enough. That must have been a tyre change. It's about the right sort of time for a tyre change. But they need to do a 150-second stop as part of their mandatory interval in the race. That's where driver Mastronardi will hand over as well to Nicholas Nielsen. They've also, well, it's actually 171 seconds technically, because they have to serve 21 further seconds because they are the championship leaders. And it's all dictated by how many points you have compared to the car 6th in the championship. One subtracted from the other, and eventually you get to 21 seconds as a pit stop handicap time. Down the Mistral, very damp indeed, and through the water splash goes the number 3 car, now driven of course by Laurence Hoare, and with Hoare the full course yellow speeds under investigation, but Hoare takes the number 3 car over, and we can hear from his teammate Jean Glorieux now chatting with Haley in the pits.
I'm joined here by Jean Glorieux, driver of the car number 3 from DKR Engineering. You had a stint littered with problems, unfortunately, out there. Just tell us how it was. The conditions weren't easy. We can see that. You started out relatively dry conditions. Now it's tipping it down outside. I mean, how did you manage that, and what happened out there?
Well, yeah, indeed it were quite challenging conditions. Start was quite good, lost 1 place, then managed to fight back to 3rd position. Difficult to follow the leaders, not very happy with my pace. And then suddenly the rain came. Came in a bit too early, in the pit lane to change to wet tires. So I lost a bit of time there. I should have waited maybe 1 or 2 laps longer. And it was difficult to get used. I haven't driven a lot with this car in rainy conditions. And on top of that, the windscreen wiper wasn't working. So I made some spins, and yeah, not too happy with that, of course. But okay. Yeah, I managed not to hit anything. That was already that was the good part of it.
Good going. You just handed over to Lawrence. You just handed over to your teammate Lawrence. I mean, how confident are you feeling about, getting some places here?
I have full confidence in Lawrence, so looking forward to watch and follow his stint, and hopefully he can manage to improve a bit on what I did.
Thank you very much, Jean.
Well, a very tough stint. I hadn't actually twigged the fact that the windscreen wiper wasn't working at times, but yeah, it's no contact, we think, between the three and Stefan Adler's EDEC Sport car. Big puff of tyre smoke as he got the Duquesne pointing in the right direction, and that wasn't the only spin that Jean Gloria would experience. News of another drive-through penalty, this time for United Autosports car 23. That was for the contact at turn 10 with car 7, and this was it. Well, this was easier to define. That's a big old shove onto the rear left corner. It immediately deflated Tony Wells' tyre. Shredded it, in fact, and he would go straight to the pit lane as a result. He was leading the race at the time, I seem to remember, Tony Wells.
Yeah, as others were coming in. Car number 21 overtaking beyond the track limits. That was the car, don't forget, at the start of the race, made the move with Nicola Molini on board. Sorry, the Mulner Motorsport car with Moritz Krantz on board. Ran wide, gained positions, went from 4th up to 3rd, then really had a good run. Great run early on, but unfortunately that's going to be tipping down the order. So we've got 4 cars who've had drive-throughs. The number 11 Racing Experience Duquesne, the number 21 Mulner Motorsport Duquesne, 23 United Autosports Ligier, and Nicola Molini, he picked up one as well for the Cool Racing Ligier, but that's not suffering too badly because it's up at the front end of the field. But it's Edward Kauhap leading the race, car number 37, not just at the front end of the field. Of course, he's handed over Molini to Kauhap, and yes, sitting on a lead of 9 and a bit seconds over Matt Bell. Haven't really talked too much about Matt, only just taken over the sister car from Cool Racing, the number 69 from Maurice Smith. But for Cool Racing, no wonder we have Nicolas Lapierre pacing around in a sort of proud and totally involved position up on the pit wall.
Now this is an interesting phase in the race in the GT3s, because Rino Mastronardi and Michel Broniszewski pitting at the same time, pretty much on the hour mark. But bear in mind, because the 8 car leads the championship, they've got to be in the pits for 21 seconds more than the 150. The 74, only 4 extra seconds, so that's a difference of 17 seconds. Bearing in mind the gap between them was 12.5 before it. It should swing it in the favour of Kessel Racing, and then we've got a real fight on our hands between replacement drivers, B drivers if you like, David Parel, who should be leading by that point, and the chasing Nicholas Nielsen. So it's all hotting up nicely in GT3. Julian Anlauer has just taken charge of the Porsche, and the Porsche's done exactly 2 minutes 30. They didn't need to do any extra time because they're not in the top 5 in the championship. So it's all pretty complicated, but what it does provide is a very close finish. And yes, Julian Anlauer will lead the class because he didn't have to take any extra time in the pit stop. Car 2, Porsche, back out in front. Was there contact a moment or two? Just a bit between 66 and... Was that the Cool Racing leader, or was it their second place car? It was one of the Cool Racing machines because it has a Swiss flag.
Could have been our race leader. Let's have a look-see. But 66 continues on its way, but that's further down the order. That's Dominic Schwager. He's taken over from Steve Parrow. It was our race leader. Car number 37, Edward Kauhap, the 16, or is he now 17-year-old French racer, looking for damage. Can't see any. A bit of a thump. But for Cool Racing, they're first and second. 7.7 seconds between Kauhap leading the race and Matt Bell. So Bell chipping away with very good effect in the number 69 entry. Graf Racing, Matthias Kaiser taken over from Rory Penttinen, but we've got bodywork damage on the 66, so unfortunately the car now in Schwager's hands. Let's hope he's not shredding more debris up the back straight.
Well, that's not helping the front right tyre, and a significant chunk of bodywork just sort of exploded 2/3 of the way down the Mistral there. So as you say, that car started by Steve Parrow and now being driven by Schwager.
Has a penalty to serve anyhow. One of 2 cars just being pinged speeding in the pit lane. Unfortunately 66 with Schwager on board now. And Patrice Lafargue's just taken over from Stefan Adler in the EDEC Sport entry. So those have also joined the list. That makes 6 of the runners, 6 of the entries serving drive-through penalties.
Let's just check these pit stops for the GT3 Championship top 5, or at least 2 of them. Perel, 2:34, that's bang on because it's the 150 seconds plus the extra 4. And actually Iron Lynx working in a bit of insurance policy there. It could have been a 2:51, it's a 2:53. But Nicholas Nielsen is back out in the race. There shouldn't be any problem with that pit stop, and he's now 7 seconds to find on David Perel. That is a task, and certainly, I mean, that's just to get to second place. They've then got Julian Andlauer to reel in as the race leader. Looking very good for TFT right now in the GT3.
Isn't it just? Had that setback on the opening lap of the race, had to chip away, fought their way up from 6th to 5th to 4th to 3rd. But then it was the way they were able to hunt down the two Ferraris, most notably the car with Broniczewski at the wheel, hauled it in, looking good. But you certainly feel, however good Nicky Leutwiler is, that Julian Andlauer would be even faster, all those years of Porsche racing experience. And but the margin at the front of the field isn't that big, but he's just looking confident. And the amount of spray coming up off the track, we can't deny it's properly wet, Johnny.
No, certainly not now. There was a question mark regarding that statement in the opening 45 minutes. Fully wet now, and he has a chasing Matt Griffin behind him. Now that's not for position, the 77 Iron Lynx Ferrari. Matt is actually 5th, and the Porsche leads GT3, so there's a full lap between those cars. More yellow flags in the area that these two GT cars have just left, turns 2, 3, 4 and 5. And another incident, oh, that was the one we caught sight of. It definitely was the race leader, Edward Kohope, having some contact with the 66 then of Dominic Schwager. That's going to be looked back on. That was pretty much on the hour of 3 o'clock. Doesn't answer the question as to why there are yellows though at 3, 4 and 5. And on our track map I can't see cars there. Our leader's just about to go into that double waved yellow section though, 37.
Yeah, I've been looking, I can see no stationary cars on the track map, but Julian Andlauer is starting to stretch his legs. But let's go down to hear from Rino Mastronardi, who was leading the GT class ahead of the round of pit stops, the proper pit stops, the driver change pit stops, not just the ones earlier on for change to wet tyres. But let's go down and join Hayley with Rino.
I'm joined here by Rino Mastronardi, driver of car number 8 for Iron Lynx. Now you just ended your stint. You were leading in the GT3 category, hand over to your teammates. However, it hasn't been without complications. You just had had your 21 second penalty, but also you lost your pole position at the beginning of the race. I mean, what can you tell us about this very complicated beginning of the race?
So far it's the tough weekend. We had a problem, I don't know what, during the check. When they checked the car after the qualifying, something was not, I don't know what, was not correct, and they decided to take us the pole away. But anyway, that's what, just a little problem, because I've been able to get the first position in about 2 or 3 laps at the beginning of the race, so that was fine. Unfortunately, the weather didn't help us so much. The rain made it a little bit more difficult. But anyway, the car was well on the dry and on the wet as well. But with the 21 second penalty, it's always difficult to stay in the lead. But anyway, it's like this. We cannot win every time.
Yeah, and that is part of the reason why this self-balancing mechanism within the regulations has been brought in. Success ballast is not used in GT3. Instead, it's a pit stop handicap time, and that is reassessed with every race, depending on whether they're in the top 5 championship or not. So they'll maybe get an advantage next time around. Edward Kohope now splishing and sploshing his way through a very wet part of the track. Now he shouldn't technically be there, but he probably braked at exactly the same point as he did a lap ago. The car snaps to the left, and thankfully no tyre wall or Armco barrier there to make contact with. He can rejoin relatively easily. I'm not sure he took any advantage there. And the gap's chiselled away again by Matt Bell, who's doing the chasing in the sister Cool Racing car. It's down to 7.2 seconds.
He's taking 2 seconds a lap. I was just thinking, I wouldn't want to be a cameraman out in the wet today, but if I was anywhere, I'd like to be the camera at turn 5 that looks back across that sequence of 3, 4 and 5. That's where so many drivers are getting it twitchy, getting it wrong. But one bit of good news, in a day there's been bad news for 6 teams getting drive-through penalties. The one for car number 21, Moritz Krantz, he was in 4th place for Mulner Motorsport going in through his first corners on the opening lap. I didn't think it was fair that he picked up a penalty, and it's been revoked. So no drive-through for car 21. And the driver at the wheel at the moment, Gilles Magnus, down in 10th place, but at least he's not dropping further back. But the spins keep on coming. The replay.
They do.
That was, we saw problems earlier for Dominic Schwager in that car. Replaced the tyre. That was... we saw it limping back after the contact with 37. There's going to be no further action for that contact with the race leader.
Yes, and that was between Schwager and Edward Cohope, but that car still looking very straight. I wonder whether he might have lost a dive plane, but it's still in place, I reckon. Highlights then of the opening hour, and stand by, Bez, there were a number of them. It could have been a different day when this race started. It's raining so much now, halfway through. Clean start, but it was too good a getaway for Nicola Morlini. He was ahead of Rory Penttinen as they headed into the first corner. There was then definitely contact between Penttinen and Morlini, which forced Morlini off the track. Two more further back, including the Tony Wells-Nielsen car, also taking to the scenery through that first sequence of turn 1 and 2, the left and the right. And initially, the top four kind of broke away. It was Rory Penttinen leading the way, but Moritz Krantz tacking onto the back there of that four-car train. Krantz went for a move on Jean Glorieux. Didn't quite come off. They, I think, made contact there. And then Moritz Krantz dived back behind it. And then there was more contact there, potentially, or Krantz just drove off the road because he was given no route alongside. That... was never investigated, I don't think. Jean Glorieux within his rights to defend the corner as he did, but it meant a Moritz Krantz spin immediately afterwards, and then it would be down to the German to try and retrieve those places as best he could. Nicky Leutwiler, an eventful race as well, falling to the back of the GT3 field, but steadily picking cars off after that. The Porsche is now the car being driven by Julian Andlauer and leading GT3, so it was crucial for Nicky Leutwiler to keep things clean as much as possible. Chasing then the 37 car, judged to be at fault for an issue earlier on. It had to come in for a pit stop and then rejoin and work its way back up the order. There was a spin for the 3 car, and then the Racing Experience car ground to a halt with Yuri Wagner at the wheel. That was retrieved in the end during our full course yellow. Rory Penttinen was well ahead of everybody else. I remember 15 seconds being on the screen at one point. This was the moment, but there was no further action. A racing incident with the two trajectories of two very different racing cars meeting in the middle, effectively. But Julian Andlauer leading the GT3 category, and the kind of foundation of this race now for that Porsche, laid by Nicky Leutwiler. It is the cool racing car of Edward Cohope and Nicola Morlini that leads at this stage by 7 seconds, with a chasing Matt Bell, again taking more time on that lap out of the leading Frenchman. But it is the Newcastle-born Matt Bell who is creating this concertina effect for the two sister cool racing cars. Where will they meet in the middle, I wonder? And how long will that take? Man from Liechtenstein, Matthias Kaiser for Graf, running in 3rd. Then it's Welshman Andy Merrick, 4th, number 24 United Autosports. Fabien Laverne took charge of the NV2S racing car, number 27, which runs in 5th place. So Laverne taking over from Christophe Cresp. And in 6th place, it's the number 3 car of Laurence Hoare, after we spoke to his teammate Jean Glorieux. In GT3, the PZ Oberer Zürichsee by TFT Porsche of Julian Andlauer, started by Nicky Leutwiler, leading the way, and that's going to take some catching now. He is almost 30 seconds clear of the Kessel Racing Ferrari of David Perel, number 74. Nicholas Nielsen for Iron Lynx, car number 8, started by Rino Mastronardi, having to serve not only 150 seconds as a mandatory stop, but the additional 21 seconds because they are the championship leaders. 3rd place, possibly the best that they can do, although Nielsen's pushing hard and is within now 4 seconds of David Perel.
Conditions properly wet at the moment, but the lead has come down and down and down. Edward Cohope, the teenager, hanging on, but that margin was 15 seconds. It's just under 6 seconds now. Matt Bell, clearly used to the rain, driving supremely well. He's taking a second and a bit per lap out of his teammate who's leading the race, but behind them, now starting to fall away. Matthias Kaiser, Andy Merrick trying to catch. He's only 6 and a bit seconds down on that battle for third place, and Fabien Laverne is catching the 2 of them, so that could be quite good within about 4 or 5 more laps.
Yeah, certainly one to look out for. Laverne, a bit of a superstar, and MV2S Racing, new-ish into the Michelin Le Mans Cup, but top 5 as things stand could be very good. Might be even better than that come the end.
Well, we've just seen the race leader Edward Cahap going past someone who was recovering from a moment probably out of turn 2. Yes, he's just gone down through turns 3, now in turn 4, turning into turn 5. But the closing speed is great when someone's rotated or just gone off the track and just rejoining. I'm trying to see which it was. I don't want to hazard a guess.
The cars behind Edward Cahap, 21, which is Gilles Magnus, and the 69 car, which is the other Cool Racing machine. I doubt it was Matt Bell, so it could have been Gilles. Could have been the 66, which is much further back now, of Dominic Schwager.
No, it wasn't. It was white and blue, so that rules out Schwager. Gaps to 5.1 seconds now. Matt Bell hunting down his teammate Edward Cahap. Cahap, short in years, short in experience, will be gaining experience of what it's like to race in very, very wet conditions. Again, visibility just a problem, not just for the drivers, for the cameramen trying to pick them out down the end of the longer sections of the straight. The view at turn 1 is GT cars looking very well balanced. The latest warning, pit stop under investigation for car number 50, one of the Kessel Racing Ferraris, Ollie Hancock, taking that over from Steve Hartshorn. John Hartshorn, sorry, beg your pardon. Oh dear. Julian Andlauer really right in the way of car number 23, the United Autosports entry, with Wayne Boyd trying to press on. We know Wayne's super quick. He's just going to have to bide his time. Getting too close behind a GT car will damage your front end. Should be able to pick it off down the straight. Yeah,
that's the better place to do it rather than the twisty technical section. Got to make sure that the GT driver has seen you as well, and with visibility really at a premium, much safer to do it on the Mistral straight, and that's exactly what the Ulsterman does. Gets a good tow off the back of the 911, Porsche 911 from TFT, the GT3R, to give it its full specification. That's a proper rear engine Porsche as well, with a flat 6, of course. And cars just coming into view include the 27, the entry from MV2S then, going strongly. 5th place, Fabien Laverne, a 2:10.0 last time around. That was 9/10 shy of Andy Merrick.
Yeah, but look at the pace of the drivers behind in 6th and 7th places. Lawrence Orr, 2 minutes 5.2, so 5 seconds faster than Fabien Laverne.
Yeah.
And Dino Lunardi in 7th place overall, Motorsport 98, he was doing a 2 minutes 6.4. They were the 2 fastest drivers on the track. They're down the order, but it often happens in a 2-hour race. When the second driver gets in, they might be down the order, but if they're quick, they can pick their way back up. And certainly great laps there from Lawrence Orr and Dino Lunardi.
Gap between the leading duo, 5 seconds now. Actually a smidge under that, so Matt Bell found more time last time around. Edward and Matt's times similar for lap 35. It must have been 34 though that Matt Bell gained a significant chunk, as Colin Noble, having taken charge of the number 7 car, water absolutely pouring off that car, and there are various areas for the water to escape, including, added to prototype cars in recent years, that hole on the top of the wheel arch, so that if cars get sideways, the air's got somewhere to escape to, rather than pitching prototypes into a roll. That's the reason why that dorsal fin is across the back of above the engine bay as well, to try and keep cars on the ground, which is really what we prefer than flying through the air.
Great battle for second place in the GT class. Julian Andlauer way up the track. He's about 30-something seconds to the good, but David Perel hanging on and being pushed super hard by Nicholas Nielsen, and the white and black Iron Lynx Ferrari behind the red and white one, windscreen wipers blazing away, but their little battle all along just helps Julian Andlauer concentrate on his own race. He's not being harried, he's got that half-minute advantage, but you almost feel it's, drivers of the calibre of Perel and certainly Nielsen are not likely to make a fumble, but Nielsen's got to work out how to find a way by. Not easy in all that spray.
The racing line looks wetter than the actual the off-track bit at the moment. I think that's just an optical illusion, because if you did get offline into turn 3, you would be skating towards the scenery very quickly. But of course, these cars are on wet weather tyres, and they like the wet. So, as a sort of hint of a racing line appears, they'll be searching around for the cooler and the wetter parts of the track. There's really only one racing line though through 6 and 7. Single file stuff. Don't hit the curb on the exit and get good drive off that corner. Windscreen wipers still very much the order of the day for the 2nd and 3rd place Ferraris.
The race is 2 hours long. We've got over 40 minutes remaining in the race. The pace is falling away. It seems to be wetter and wetter. Every time you look for a little line that might be drier for the drivers, their lap pace is getting worse. The visibility is getting worse. We've still got a 4-hour race for the European Le Mans Series later this evening, starting at 6:30. It's coming up. It's just gone 3:15. No wonder the teams are checking their weather maps by the moment. Rain coming in bands, and right now it's survival. It's about not making the mistakes. Race leader Edward Cowhap under 5 seconds good, 4.8 seconds over Matt Bell. Matt's been hunting him down all the time. No pressure from behind, because the car in 3rd place, Matthias Kaiser for Graf, is down 50 seconds in arrears. So the first two for Cool Racing, it's theirs to lose. But which one's going to end up on top? Would it be Matt Bell, or would it be 16, 17-year-old Edward Cowhap, who's just super impressive as he gains experience in these fabulous silhouette races?
Yeah, there's a bit of a question mark, I suppose, regarding Cool Racing. Are they going for just the better team result, or will there be some jostling of position permitted? 37 better place in the championship currently. 69 car has 16 points to its name. The 37, 26 points to its name. So better really from a championship perspective for Edward Cowhap and Molini to take maximum points. Matt Bell might have some other plans though, and he's now only 3.3 seconds away.
He certainly might, but a certain person with plans is Dino Lunardi. He's the fastest driver on the track. He's right on the tail of number 3 now. Lorenzo, don't forget, champion last year, but being hunted down. Lunardi, series of fast laps to pick off one of the Iron Lynx Ferraris, but it's double flashing of the light there from Lunardi. You've seen me, have you really seen me? Let's make sure you have. Slow exit there from Lawrence Hoare. I think he went in on the wrong angle into scene, and an overtaking manoeuvre comes very easily indeed to Lunardi. Brave and very, very effective. You thought he'd lost momentum there behind the Ferrari, but somehow he just seemed to have a better run into the corner. I think there was a very slight mistake and a lift from Lawrence Hoare, but that was all the opportunity that was required for Lunardi. Up to 6th place he goes.
And how close were the two cars to coming into contact as they went then through? They may well have been contact actually, or did the dive plane just thread its way around the outside of the cheese wedge? But I thought Lawrence Hoare, blimey, he knows the dimensions of his car pretty well. Maybe not so much as I first thought.
Just a thought. We heard from Jean Glorieux saying he had no working windscreen wiper. Has that been fixed? It's not moving on the screen. I think Lawrence Hoare is doing this with spray in his face.
Yeah, that's a good call, and yes, the windscreen wiper is centrally positioned, so it's easy to work out whether it is wigging and wagging from left to right. I think visibility at a real premium as we head down to Haley again in the pits.
So I'm joined here by Nicolas Lapierre, managing consultant for Cool Racing. Unfortunately, we couldn't find Nicolas Mordini. He's about back somewhere, probably having a drink or something after what is a great performance. Maybe not the start he wanted, but he progressed well, and you're currently 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, Nico clearly jumped the start. We saw it from the beginning. The pole sitter was going very slow and he couldn't slow down enough, so we got a drive-through that was fair enough. But then he did a super job. He came back and he was driving fantastically on the rain. And Maurice Smith, our 2nd bronze driver, did also a great job on the 69. So we are now 3rd and 2nd, but the conditions are getting really slippery and hard out there. So we ask our driver to take no risk, but he's starting to aquaplaning a bit, so we're going to see. It's going to be a last 40 minutes, they're going to be difficult, but we are in a good position right now.
Absolutely, both in 1st and 2nd place. I mean, are there any team orders going to be put into place?
We want to let them fight for sure. I mean, Edouard is a very young driver, very talented, but he's one of his first time on the rain, so he's discovering the car, and Matt has a lot of experience in the P3, but they are both very clever, so hopefully they're going to have a clean fight.
Thank you very much, Nicolas.
Well, that's great to hear. The shackles are off. Team orders very much frowned upon, of course, and two distinct sides of the garage. So Matt Bell now has Edward Kohope in his sights. They will have been chatting, I'm sure, at Team Hospitality all weekend. Matt will know that Kohope is relatively early on in his racing career and not that experienced in the wet stuff. Matt Bell taking the tighter line at senior corner. So I think there will be the opportunity for an overtake. It's just that Matt won't be really turning the screw, perhaps as if he was attacking a car from a completely different team. They don't want to scupper a potentially amazing result, though, with an embarrassing bit of contact. So that to be avoided. If Matt Bell gets a good run, maybe out of turn 7 and onto the Mistral, that might be the opportunity. Big squirm from Kohope as, again, he got just a couple of tyres onto the wet stuff through Garlabat, and that is all it takes to lose grip and to lose a fair chunk of time.
I just think that Matt's got all the experience, and as we heard from Nicolas Lapierre, this is a first proper run in a prototype in the rain for Edward Kohope. But it's about knowing where the edge, the limit is, and Matt Bell's got all those years of experience. He can afford to bide his time. He hauled the advantage came down from over a dozen seconds. It's now down to 3/4 of a second. He'll choose his moment. There are a couple of back markers ahead of them. I sense, it might just be my wild optimism, but the weather is not continuing to be worse. It's becoming a little better, but there's so much standing water that the spray is enormous. And just talking of that, Lawrence Hall just checking his lap times. Well, doing that without a windscreen wiper, he's still running around in 7th place, but he will be desperately keen for this spray to dissipate. 35 minutes remaining in the race, but for all the rivals, they've got working windscreen wipers. They take what they can, but for Lawrence Hall, it's going to be very, very tricky for DKR Engineering. There is starting to be a less wet line. I won't call it a dry line. It's one in which the water has been taken away, but it still sits within the tarmac. But Matt Bell is using all that experience, and I think we could get to the point in the closing laps of the race where people are going to have tyres with not a lot of life left in them. There could be massive chunking if it continues to dry.
Yeah, every chance of that with a track that's getting grippier and grippier. Wet tyres just do not like that, and the block started to move around on the tread, so traction becomes a real premium if it wasn't already. Now this is the point where the two overall leaders are trying to get by the second place fight in GT3 by the looks of things. Yeah, David Perel and Nicholas Nielsen still virtually nose to tail. So could this provide an opportunity maybe for Nielsen to get an overtake done and dusted as the two faster prototypes fashion an opportunity to get by? 34 and a bit minutes still to go, and still water pouring down the sides of both the 37 and the 69 cars, first and second, and Matt Bell is now in that awkward area where the spray is hampering his visibility massively.
What I just saw Matt Bell do I thought was quite interesting. He suddenly jinked out to jinked out the side again, because yes, I thought he's clever. He's trying to see what's ahead in the spray. He sensed there were some other cars up ahead. He pulled out and may have been able to discern their GT cars, but actually he's lost a little bit of the ground he's made up. But I thought he was just taking a look because he wants to see. That will affect also where he thinks he might make an attempted passing manoeuvre. And if he senses, right, okay, they're GT cars, I've raced those, I know where their performance margin is and where they're going to be really struggling. And that's the point. I want to put my teammate in a predicament and I can get past. Yeah, he's closed right onto his tail again, so I don't think it's a car problem. But it was just him being very sensible, I would say.
Well, I think initially, yes, the moment at 13 looked to be more like a mistake, whether he just caught a patch of standing water and that put the car from the left-hand side of the track well over to the right, almost as if he was going to come down into the pit lane. Thankfully, it's a wide bit of track there and does allow you an opportunity to correct, but he was definitely further behind Edouard Kohope as they came across the line. That's found that time back again very quickly. Yeah, because on the start-finish line, it was 1 and a bit seconds. It's down to 0.8 of a second, but still those two fighting GT-class Ferraris in front of them, and Edouard Kohope, the race leader, does not want them there, but here comes the move from Nicholas Nielsen, closer than ever before as they go up the Mistral straight. Nobody really in front of them, but where is the move going to come? Will it come into... No, it won't. Will it come into turns 9 and 10?
more likely. But that said, really brave into the corner from David Perel. Ekes a tiny advantage and holds on to that.
He was massively sideways though there, the South African, exiting senior corner, and loads of opposite lock. Did so well to hang on to that, but that's cost him more time and may well be a sitting duck, excuse the pun, as he heads towards the end of the track. It's certainly good weather for ducks right now, and as he heads towards the end of the lap at Garlaban, the distraction as well as the race leaders behind. What about David Perel here? Out onto the curb, and almost at 45 degrees. But Nicholas Nielsen wasn't close enough to pounce.
But again, if it's not just any corner when you're going over the curbs, it's seen, it's the corner the drivers think about all the time. It's wet, there is a beyond, but you're going to be going right across that really, really fast indeed. In fact, had Nielsen been any closer than that, he might have been compromised. As it was, it just enabled him to close onto the tail all over again. Gap between first and second, 0.3 of a second now. It was 0.8 last time around, 0.3 now. Matt Bell getting closer and closer to Edward Cowham, and now starting to flash lights at him to try and unsettle his teammate. But it's first and second for Cool Racing. But yeah, I sense it was almost like a cool down lap from Matt Bell, and now he's right on it again.
Neither one of these prototypes though actually gaining any time, it looks like, on the Ferraris, and this is a great kind of direct comparison between mechanical grip and aerodynamic grip. Okay, the P3's a bit closer this time, and maybe these two cars will be able to pick off at least one of the Ferraris down the Mistral, but I would have expected the P3s to have been catching GT3s far more readily. Got to be the weather that's the defining factor there. That's the real leveller. And again, the LMP3 struggling to lay down their massive amount of power. 5.6 litre V8s from the Nissan, the Orica prepared Nissan engines. And now maybe Edouard Kohout will be able to get ahead of Nicholas Nielsen, but it's going to be a close run thing. This is fascinating because they just can't quite get close enough to the Ferraris this time then. And more because of visibility, I think Kohout goes to the outside of Senior. Matt Bell likewise ducks out of line briefly to get away from the spray from the 37. This is a perfect race to direct because all the action's in one frame pretty much.
No, exactly so, and it's not really, this battle between first and second between Kohout and Bell isn't really allowing a great advantage for Matthias Kaiser in third place. He is catching them, but he's only he's 43 seconds back, but he's not compromised. They're scrapping for position, but unfortunately for them, but fortunately for the fans and people watching on TV and as well track, and obviously not trackside, it's a closed meeting. They're holding them up, but they're having such a good scrap of their own. This time around, I think it's much, much closer. In fact, the two GT cars and the P3 cars, they're covered by a second and a bit as they go across the start-finish line. 0.27 of a 272 of a second for Kohout, who advantage Kohout has over Matt Bell. Looks left, looks right, holds on into turn one, but again, can't use the natural pace of the car there, Johnny. He's still got those Ferraris right in front.
That's right. And could Edouard Kohout be faster if he didn't have those two prancing horses in front of him? At times I think yes, at other times not so sure. Because again, the Ferraris far less reliant on the downforce that they generate. It's more about the weight of these sort of 1,200, 1,300 kilo Ferraris and the mechanical grip that they generate. The P3's right with the Ferraris once again. First and second, actually third and fourth in this train. And then the GT3 battle is all about Julien Andlauer, who we're not grabbing a sight of, but that's fine because he's kind of so far up the road. It's going to take a lot for the Porsche not to win this race. We're more interested in how the Ferraris, in what order the Ferraris will finish. Nicholas Nielsen doing the chasing, third position in GT3, trying to hunt down David Perel. He didn't get a very good run onto the Mistral though this time. Nicholas Nielsen losing a massive amount of ground, and both of the race leaders in P3 are able now to get between the two.
Yeah, slightly compromised line there for Kohout into seeing he found himself too far to driver's right as he went up, but he's done just enough, taking the wider line and maybe hoping to move into lead. Matt Bell has had to tuck in behind him. They've got past Nielsen, and now it could be happy days for David Perel, but so many other things to consider in this. But one thing I've noticed, Johnny, you can actually see a lot more of the hill in the background. The conditions are improved, but there's still so much water down there, the drivers may not notice it yet.
Yeah, that kind of fine mist that descended on the track is slowly clearing. Now the two leaders have got too far apart for Matt Bell's liking, because Edward Cohope got the jump on the red Ferrari of David Perel. Matt Bell's going to have to wait for his opportunity to get in front of the second-placed Ferrari. Sensibly follows Perel's every move from one side of the track to the other to shadow him, to get the toe, and should be able to duck underneath that Ferrari before turn one, so that's a neat bit of driving. But Matt Bell's kind of back to where he started now. All that hard work to whittle down a, well, 6-second lead. It's opened up to maybe 2 seconds once again.
I sort of think that Matt Bell actually is going to be able to close it up again. Yes, it's really opened out, not to his advantage, but he just looks a bit more sure than Edward Cohope. So he should be, with all those extra years of experience, but conditions still so slippery. But lap time's starting to fall again. Dino Lunardi, I'll blow his trumpet again, because he's in 6th place. He's chipping away at Fabien Laverne, but they're faster than all the drivers in front of them, so gradually starting to close up at the top of the race. But let's just reiterate, the fact is the car in 3rd place is 36 seconds down on Matt Bell, but he's been gaining 3-4 seconds a lap in the last few laps. But of course, mitigating circumstances. The two cars from Cool Racing been fighting hammer and nail to get past the drivers, the leading Ferraris in GTE. But of course, the GTE class is led by the Porsche by 53 seconds. Let's do the maths on that. Might have just gone out by another second, 56 seconds.
And the other cars in GT3 are Andrea Bellicchi 4th in his number 67 Kessel Racing Ferrari, ahead of Matt Griffin, who's kind of stuck in 5th place. Can't make that many inroads. He was, well, about a second quicker than Bellicchi, but I think that's down to traffic actually more than anything else. And Ollie Hancock circulating at about the same sort of speed as well, taking over the John Hartshorn Ferrari down at Kessel 2.
Matt Bell has closed right up onto the tail of the race leader again. He got separated by about, what, 2 seconds or maybe slightly more as they went past the Ferrari of David Perel. About half a second now between 1st and 2nd in this race, and with every lap the gap to Matthias Kaiser's coming down, but with 25 minutes remaining on the clock and still a 36-second advantage over 3rd place. I think the Cool Racing pair are safe in the lead. It's a question of which one is going to be able to get to the end of the race in front. Conditions improving all the time. Visibility finally becoming visibility. Oh, yeah. Twitch there down into turn 1 from Matt Bell. So what he's gained in the previous lap, I think he's just lost out on.
Meanwhile, a moment or two ago, the Colin Noble-driven Nielsen car with a big spin between turns 2 and 3. He did well to get it pointing in the right direction very quickly, find first gear and carry on as if nothing happened, but that's how easy your race can turn. Again, just a bit too much of that wet curbing on the exit of turn 2, and the Scotsman was going for a ride, not really knowing where he was going to end up, but it's all about kind of keeping your bearings. Hopefully you don't hit anything solid and rejoining as quickly as possible.
I really think the move that's going to come from Matt Bell surely is just traffic dependent, what they catch where, because seen in the straight battle he's able to catch Edward Cohope, but Edouard is being very capable at Deed about defending his lead in this race, but he's getting increasingly desperate when they come up to tail enders. He has to let them know that he's there, that they can see him, and they're going to give him space. But any little chink in the armour, and Matt Bell in 2nd place in the 69 Cool Racing Ligier is going to exploit it.
Generally, some relaxed expressions down at Cool Racing, enjoying the action, the sharp end, and I'm sure there are some quiet instructions whispered into both the ears of Edward Cohope and Matt Bell to say, you're free to race, just don't take unnecessary risk, and bear in mind what a great position we're both in here, 1st and 2nd. Another squirm and a slide from Edouard Cohope, whereas Matt Bell was slightly more controlled through Garlebin into Virage du Lac, Virage du Pont to come next, and Matt Bell, I'm sure, had this been, for instance, the Graf car that he was chasing, a United Autosports machine, MV2S, Matt Bell would have hurled one up the inside there at turn 14. So they've adjusted their driving styles accordingly. But nevertheless, Matt Bell and Maurice Smith are desperate for a race victory. Again, Matt Bell turning in, and the car at the rear just snaps away. Says, no, I don't think so, not at this speed, with this lack of traction. And he has to be fleet of foot to address the line into 1. Red Ferrari ahead of white and black Ferrari. Still the same order, therefore, between David Pirel and Nicholas Nielsen. Second and third in GT3, with Julien Anlau, the young Frenchman, still leading in the Porsche. Was this a moment for Julien? No, it was the car behind with a sideways flick, and then the 3 car has to straight line. Also, for 24, United Autosport's Andy Merrick backwards into the tyres. No, he's missed the tyres, but he has lost a huge amount of time from
position.
fourth.
And a position. I was just looking at the screens while you were talking there, Johnny, and Fabien Laverne, who's been going very well with Dino Lunardi hunting him down, now have Andy Merrick between them, so a little bit of frustration there. Still frustration for the driver in second place, Matt Bell. He's able to pretty much get right onto the tail of the race leader, his own teammate Edward Cowhart, but they've got traffic in front of them. This could be the moment for Bell. He's got to, as they go between Seine and Double Dwight, make a move, and he's done it. And in fact, Edouard has now been spooked by that, has run a little bit wide, couldn't turn into the corner, and is about a second in arrears. So for Cool Racing, maybe they can actually relax, because one would expect Matt Bell to be able to pull away a little bit. They didn't have to wait and see a lunge up, a dangerous dive up the inside. It was all there. He had better speed into the corner and decided, well, now is the moment.
And that was good, actually, to go straight down to Cool Racing for some reaction. Some of the young lads who are obviously on the spanners this weekend know which is their car, and there was a wry smile, I think, from the guy in the middle who was secretly backing Matt Bell in the 69. My car's in front, excellent, and we did it without any contact as well. Yeah, Coho getting on the wet stuff off the racing line, the car actually just understeering wide at turn 9. No real harm done. They are over half a minute ahead of Matthias Kaiser, so it would take an awful lot for them not to get a 1-2, and actually the faster car now in front, which is the safer position to be in, I would say. Still plenty of traffic though for Matt Bell and then Edward Cowhart to negotiate. Is that one of the CD Sport cars next on the list? Turning right, it's the number 6, I think, of Jacques Wolf. And this car was the exception to the rule. Is it the 5? No, it is the 6 of Jack Wolf. Ooh, Matt Bell got very close to the back of Wolf's machine there. The exception to the rule because the 6 started with the silver-rated Geoffrey Denarder, you may remember, and Jack Wolf took it over at half distance.
Well, Geoffrey was making great progress. He was one of the drivers we really enjoyed watching in the first stage of the race. But what you could see, we've got a car in the pits that's not planned, car number 27 at the standstill, and that's Fabien Laverne, who just got up into 4th place, but he's serving that second pit stop. Is that right, Johnny?
Yes, it is.
Into the final 20 minutes.
That's right. Gentlemen, we're literally seconds into the final 20 minutes, and yeah, there is another stop to come for all of the LMP3s, and this has been instigated to make sure we're okay on fuel, and very thirsty Nissan engine for this year, the new LMP3 era, brand new cars, brand new engine as well. And yes, every single LMP3 car has to now stop for a second time during the last 20 minutes.
But it's a 40-second stop.
Yeah, from
not 150.
So that's right. It just enables everybody to jettison a little bit of fuel into the tank, and gives that insurance policy so that we don't have cars running out of fuel on the penultimate lap, the final lap.
Fastest driver on the circuit, as he has been pretty much the last 15 minutes, Dino Lunardi hunting down Andy Merrick. Of course, Merrick had that little rotation for United Autosports, got going again, but he's only 2 seconds to the good. He's holding on to that 4th place, but Lunardi for Motorsport 98, black with the bright orange trim, going supremely well. Track continues to dry out, but drivers continue to have their moments on the circuit and near the circuit. The number 77 Ferrari being sent into a spin. That's Matt Griffin. Double timing this weekend. He won't be too impressed with that at all. He had the corner and was given a bit of a love tap.
And when you are at that angle at turn 14, it's then really tricky to know when it's safe to restart. Steve Harris moved earlier in the year, so you're entirely reliant on the marshals down at 14 giving you the signal, and reliant on anybody next through that bit of the track to be watching for yellow flags. Because especially in wet weather conditions, you've got to be slow enough to react to anybody who might be spinning, and there's another one there. Turn 3, that's the 10 car that was started by Rob Hodes and now has Garrett Grist, young Canadian driver, at the wheel.
Grist, of course, having totally different experience, because Hodes did his entire stint on dry weather tyres.
That's right.
Stayed out late, and finally handed over to Grist, and they said, "Do you have tyres with grooves?" "Oh, yes, please."
Yeah, it's a novelty, but they're always better, generally speaking, in the wet weather. Somebody else going for a slip and a slide, perhaps. Not the other Nielsen car, but understeering wide is the MV2S machine of Christophe Cresp, who is back in that car. Is that right?
I'm trying to remember. He certainly started it.
And Fabien Laverne we had, didn't we? Yeah. And now Christophe Cresp goes back in. Now, I think they did that driver change during the shorter stop.
They must have done, because it was Laverne in it 2 minutes ago. So,
which, now, according to my understanding of the regulations, that's not permitted. It is fuel only for 40 seconds, in to out, and no room for a little tweak of strategy. Could be wrong on that.
It could be something as simple as having knocked the driver identification button.
I don't really see why they would have chosen to do that, because Cresp is the bronze and therefore slower than Fabien Laverne. So yes, that shout about driver ID could well be valid.
Andy Merrick hanging on to fourth place. Dino Lunardi all over his tail, and Merrick yet another person to add his name to the list. We saw David Perel a few laps ago getting it wild and hairy and sideways out of scene, and then Andy Merrick using all his years of experience to catch his moment. But he is the hunted, and the hunter is definitely Dino Lunardi. They're lapping appreciably quicker than majority ahead of them. Actually, I think we ought to be a big up Matthias Kaiser. He's been chipping away to try and see what he can do about Matt Bell, but took best part of 2 seconds out of the race leader in the last lap. He's been hunting, but now Lunardi into the pits, gets off the tail of Andy Merrick, the driver he hunted down, in to make that final pit stop. Just over a quarter of an hour remaining in this 2-hour race for the Michelin Le Mans Cup, but you try making a highlights tape out of this, because everyone has had a moment of embarrassment at some point, because the track conditions have been horrendous.
They have, very difficult to read indeed, and Ollie Hancock, an experienced racer in all sorts of different machinery, and yet that car, the rear, stepping out, and he had little choice but to take to the escape route at turn 1. Race leaders Matt Bell, 48 laps now completed, will be well over the 50 mark when this one's finished. And this car still has to make a second stop. It's got 2 pit stops to its name. Well, the first one was just a regular tyre stop that doesn't count to either of the mandatory ones. Then it did a 2:32, so 152 seconds. That's well within the envelope. The insurance policy, if you like. And now they'll have to do the shortened stop to just blast the tank full of fuel, or partially full of fuel, before they can continue on. But it's looking very good for the 69 machine, and speaking of that extra pit stop, it's going to be taken now.
Yeah, weather conditions gradually improving, but if someone just happened to look at a screen, they'd go, gosh, it's wet out there. So it's improving from a very, very wet middle sector to this race. We had the cars all starting on slick tyres, but it was clear before the first regular pit stop had to be served, the mandatory one, that drivers are going to have to change onto treaded tyres. A lot of them managed to do it under full course yellow. And don't forget Rory Penttinen, who drove so well to lead the race. Unfortunately for him, he came in just after the full course, or as the full course yellow was being cleared. So unfortunately for that team, it's somewhat further down the order than they deserved.
Cool Racing race leader going again. Matthias Kaiser not pitting yet for its third and final stop. Second of the mandatory ones. Edward Cohope has been in and out. And how's that for Matt Bell and Cohope for that matter? But Matt Bell, 41 seconds. It needs to be 40. Bang on the money. And he even got a little bit of insurance in there as well. 43 seconds for Edouard Cohope. And they're now going to be separated by 7.2 seconds, it looks like, Bell to Edouard.
Well, those are good laps from Bell before the pit stop, yes. Really, having made the move. Track conditions just bit by bit getting better. But, when your confidence has been, rather hampered by how wet it was, sometimes you take a bit of convincing that it really, really is improving. And again, if you're running behind another car that's putting up a lot of spray, you can't see how much it's improving by. But Matt Bell, that experience working really well. So, the car that Rory Penttinen led the race, first half of the race in, is still leading now in the hands of Matthias Kaiser. Been going very well, but the 2 cars that had been in front of him have served their final pit stop. He has yet to do so. And with the clock counting down to just 13 minutes precisely towards the end of the 2 hours, it's going to be surely a 1-2 for Cool Racing, and Graf in third place. Matthias Kaiser, great run, but too much of a deficit. Simply, unfairly for that pairing, they didn't get the timing of their pit stop right under full course yellow, and I would say that pretty much is their deficit in this race.
Yeah, it's tough, I suppose, when it does unravel a little bit that way. But there's only so much you can do to counteract that in your pre-race plans. 12.5 minutes to go. Still, frustratingly for Nicholas Nielsen, staring at the back of David Perel's Ferrari, finding no real concrete opportunity to get through. There are times when that elastic band gets very short indeed between the two 488s, and then David Perel kind of can cope with it. So the Nicholas Nielsen car can certainly live with Perel's pace and better it at times, but he needs to get that good opportunity into one of the slower speed corners.
But they're over 1 minute 20 seconds down on the class leading Porsche. Julian Andlau doing a great job. They're having a fab battle, but for the TFT team, it's really, really exciting times. And for Julian Andlau, it's going to be a long final 10 minutes, but I think the advantage is big enough that he could be confident.
And Matthias Kaiser continues to lead. We're heading towards the final 10 minutes of this race with Matt Bell doing the chasing. Matthias Kaiser's car does have to pit though for its final stop, as we can head down to TFT to see how nerves are there for Leutwiler.
Here by Nicholas Leutwiler, driver of part number 2, currently in the lead in GT3. Now, your last time you were here at Le Castellet, you had a bit of a technical problem and you did not finish. However, this time you're currently in the lead, having a great run out there. I mean, what would you put that down to?
I didn't quite get the question at the very end.
So you're really in the lead. I mean, what can you put this down to? You're really managing conditions well out here.
Yeah, first of all, I have to say I'm very happy that we're in the lead, given what happened to us last time. And why are we in the lead? Because we very much prepared for this race with the rain and everything. We knew it's going to come, and we put basically everything onto the setup of a rain car, and that's what's helping us to stay in front, hopefully.
And that's what's making the difference in front of the Ferrari. And that's what's making the difference you're currently ahead of the Ferraris.
Yeah, it looks like we're roughly about the second faster in the rain, and I think that's the result of all the work that we put in. So very happy with that, and second and third place they're fighting, so they're losing a little bit of time obviously with this as well. Very good.
Nicky Leutwiler chatting to Haley Edmonds down in the pits, and some interesting comments there from Nicky. I mean, when he hands the car over to Julian Andlau, what a safe pair of hands that is as well. Still a young kid, but a Porsche specialist, and loves the conditions regardless of really what appears from the sky next. And it's been tricky to judge that through the course of this 2-hour race, but you just get the feeling that young Julian can cope with it. Nicky Leutwiler set the foundation. I said that earlier on. He had a sticky patch at the start, which put him right at the back of the GT3s, but then he just picked them off one by one, those Ferraris. And they were helped, no doubt, with the additional time that the championship leaders had to soak up as part of their pit stop handicap time. 9 minutes to go, and more messages appearing at the bottom of our screen, I notice, for car 27. There's a 2-second stop-and-go penalty for not respecting the minimum pit stop time. That'll be the 150-second pit stop. They were short by 2 seconds, and the rule is you've got to come in and serve that time that you should have done first time around in the form of a stop-go. So it's much more costly than if they'd just taken the 2 seconds along with all the other ones during the pit stop. There we are.
It throws the pit in, the pit length of the pit lane and the pit out into the equation. So a big costly error. Just looking at the gap between first and second, 10.4 seconds. So since that final pit stop, Matt Bell able to stretch the advantage in the lead of the race over his Cool Racing teammate Edward Cohope, who's really impressing here. But you have to say that extra experience, a decade or so more experience from Matt Bell, and putting it to very good use indeed. Andy Merrick now in third place, but still owes us that final pit stop. He stayed out longer than his rivals. Matthias Kaiser who was fleetingly leading this race, but he will be heading for third place. He's serving that final pit stop right now. He's had a really good final stint in this race, but unfortunately no way he could make up the deficit that simply came by dint of the fact that Rory Penttinen, who started this car, had, to my mind, either just didn't react quickly enough when they went to full course yellow, or had just passed pit in. I think it might have been the former.
Yes.
By a tiny margin.
No, but I remember you saying that at the time, and it's had a significant narrative on the race as a result of that, but it may just have been that he wasn't in the right place at the right time. Sometimes when a full course yellow hits, you've already passed the pits and you're then locked into 5 and a bit kilometres at just 80 kph. Mightily frustrating. It's also going to be a drive-through penalty for car 5 after contact with the Ferrari of Matt Griffin, wasn't it? Yeah, just remembering that incident now. CD Sports' Nick Adcock. I'm sure it was Nick driving at the time, could well have been. If not, it was Michael Jensen. Those two coming to blows, and that was judged to be the number 5's fault. Still an awful lot of standing water out there, and a hint of conditions improving may have gone again now. Tricky to pick out the race. Not quite the race leader, second place car of Edouard Cohope. 10 seconds now adrift of Matt Bell, who leads on this 53rd lap of the race.
Well, Matt will be paying clear attention to the countdown to the end of the race. As you say, just over 6 minutes remaining. The gap is slightly coming down. He can afford, with that buffer of 10 seconds or so, just be a little bit cautious. It's still tricky out there. The car's fighting over second place in the GT class, both just having twitches. Nicholas Nielsen in third place, trying to catch David Perel. We've seen Perel already trying to show us all his car sponsors by putting the tail sideways out of scene. Got it together somehow, but it's still really tricky conditions out there. Still a lot of spray. Look to the mountain in the background. In fact, a while ago the visibility was clearer, so we actually have got another rain shower coming in. So really hard for this battling duo.
Over the line they go. 5.5 minutes left on the clock, and the team that arrived at Le Castellet for the second time this year as the championship leaders will be up against it a little bit, and that's because of that 21 extra seconds that Rino Mastronardi and Nicholas Nielsen had to take into account. They had 52 points, thought they'd got pole earlier on today, but that was taken away from them after the session because of a rear diffuser infringement. And now off the track for Rinaldi Racing, car 55. This is the car that was started by Alex Matchell, now has Daniel Kylvitz at the wheel of that.
Well, to be honest, the conditions so tricky at the moment. I'm surprised we haven't had more spinners in recent laps, but dearie me.
Garlaban corner. Unusual to have a car go off to the left-hand side there, but that's purely because of the conditions, and I don't think made contact with the barrier. So there's a little bit of almost a gravel trap there, which did very well in arresting the speed of the 55 car as it headed towards the scenery. Yellow flags at turn 12 for that very reason.
You know, I just said a few moments ago it looks like there's more rain arriving. I think it's actually just starting to make a real difference. Visibility down the Mistral Straight has fallen away enormously in the past few minutes. So while we're sitting in the dry in a commentary position, anybody out there is getting really wet now. And just as the visibility was coming back, it has plummeted. So for the race leader, Matt Bell, his advantage was 10 seconds, was 9, it's now 7.7 seconds. We've only got just under 4 minutes remaining. David Perel trying to hang on to that second place, or the best of the Ferraris in the GT class. But how many twitches is he going to have to save? He's saved many, and there's another one right now. And again, Garlaban, the corner we've just seen Daniel Kylvitz going off, clearly has got a new river running around the outside.
And Julian Anlau, what happened to him coming out of turn... where's that? The early part of the lap, isn't it? Out of turn 2 in the short, sharp run towards 3, 4 and 5. But again, well controlled by the young Frenchman. This is amazing car control from all three, really, in the GT3. We're focusing in on these guys. Let's not forget as well Andrea Bellicchi, Matt Griffin and Ollie Hancock too. I know GT cars are the more favourable of our two categories in the wet weather because they have superior mechanical grip, but these guys are sort of four-wheel drifting it now around the track, just desperate for this thing to be over, as now Nicholas Nielsen takes to the runoff road between 1 and 2?
Well, the pace of the front runners, Matt Bell and Edward Kohope, just dropped by 8 seconds on that lap. That is just how much conditions have worsened. And another spinner just coming back, 27 there, tumbling down the order. That's Christoph Cresp, already under investigation. But in fact, they owed us the drive-through penalty, didn't they, for the pit stop time infringement. And now that worst thing, stuck on the curbs, don't know whether to go forwards or back. 2.5 minutes remaining. How much more incident can we have in this race? But the important news for Matt Bell, he's leading by 9 seconds. Just put a bit more of that buffer back over his teammate, young Edouard Kohope.
And I think actually the MV2S car has been in again, hasn't it? After that was a genuine switch from Fabien Laverne to Christoph Cresp, who's now struggling to get the car back in the race, because when the driving change happened, that was a pit stop of about a minute. They've been in again to do a let's get the right line, 27's done a 46-second stop, which is fine for your fuel stop. So nothing to say you can't stop 4 times, as is the case for that machine, or 3 times.
Well, Andy Merrick's had a spin as well, so he's just served the final pit stop. They were very late in doing that, but
hands up out of turn 2 as well. We are nearing the end of this one, folks. A minute and 40 seconds left on the clock. That's much less than a lap time.
One spin is 360, 2 is 720, and for Merrick it was a 1080.
Wow, that takes some doing. And he'll be incredibly dizzy after that, making sure that he was vaguely pointing in the right direction. Is this the direction of travel around the circuit? Oh yes. Onward we go. Right, so Matt Bell's now heading through Garlaban. He'll cross the line with well over probably a minute left, so there'll be one more lap, and this will be 55 laps completed, turning it into a 56-lap race. And keen for more is the man from the northeast of England. He is 11 seconds clear of Edward Kohope, his teammate at Cool Racing. Matthias Kaiser, solid in third. Good points for Graf. It'll be 15 for the French squad, assuming they make the finish. Dino Lunardi for Motorsport 98 on course for 12 points with his 4th place finish. Very gingerly through turn 2 goes Matt Bell. He can afford to apply the power slightly more readily now on his run towards 3, 4 and 5. There are a couple of GT cars up ahead. That's actually the battle for second position, just out of shot. But in the near vicinity, David Perel and Nicholas Nielsen still duking it out, separated by a second and a bit. But for the final time, out of 6 goes Matt Bell through the kink at 7, the left-hander that takes him onto the Mistral straight. And maybe now Nicky Leutwiler can start to relax, because looking very likely that it'll be a win for the first time this season for the Porsche from TFT Racing.
And they have to be really, really chuffed with that. Not only did they not finish their one previous outing, but they haven't just won this. They've got about a minute over the best of the rest. Yes, they haven't been in the scrap, but they worked their way into that position. They got into the lead of the class. And for Julian Andlauer, great to have this young gun alongside him, but I don't think you can underestimate what a great job Julian did in that opening stint of the race. Whatever happened on the first lap made them do the fight back and did it supremely well. Conditions, though, they've got worse and worse, and right now it really is tiptoeing around the circuit. 2 minutes 18 for the last lap for our race leader. Doesn't matter, the buffer is now 12.5 seconds. This is the final lap. No more mistakes.
Well, I think Matt Bell will have everything crossed, that he doesn't catch an errant bit of standing water that he's not spotted to this point. But I mean, taking absolutely no risks here. We've already seen big wiggles at Garlaban in both P3 and the GT3, so he's reined back the speed to ensure this will be a neat and tidy lap into Virage du Lac, Virage du Pont. And this has been a challenge from start to finish, really. A matter of survival in the early stages in the dry, very much the case in the wet. And it is going to be certainly a win for Cool Racing, most likely a 1-2. There is that Swiss team's reaction. And Matt Bell taking victory with his teammate, who did a stellar job, Maurice Smith, kept things out of trouble in the opening stages. Second place will go to Nicola Molini and Edward Kohope, who was put into the car for the second stint, and the young man really excelling there. Limited experience in the wet. Cool Racing can't quite believe that. They have been put through the mill and calling their cars through every single sector as it got late on. Sadly, their paint jobs don't look quite as good as when these cars started their race. Same can be said for TFT and Julian Andlauer with a big squirm and a slide as well at Garlaband. It's never over till it's quite over. I think all is in hand for Julian Andlauer, who takes to the natural racing line at Virage du Lac. That's aptly named, isn't it, in these conditions? Virage du Pont, the final corner. And now across the line to take victory for PZ Aubera Zürichsee by TFT. Their Porsche 911 GT3 are victorious. Nicky Leutwiler and Julian Andlauer. Congratulations to the two of them. Missed out Graf, who will complete the podium in LMP3 with their 26 machine. The Matthias 26 car of Matthias Kaiser and Rory Penttinen.
Just a moment, car number 98 was coming around in third position. Dino Lunardi has tumbled down to sixth. I think he's gone off on the final lap because suddenly Kaiser was fourth. I was thinking, what a shame they lost the podium. I checked that out for you. 98, can't find him on the circuit. Yeah, he's only got through the first and second timing sectors.
Yeah, and he's now pushing the car down the start-finish straight to make sure it gets across the line. That is heroic stuff. And he's so desperate to get a race finish. So Dino Lunardi out of the car and literally pushing from the rear wing his car across the line. He's lost out on sixth. Colin Noble's just seen the checkered flag, but everybody else is a lap behind. So Lunardi should get a finish. Well, the car, I don't know what the rule is actually. Has the car got to be under its own steam? We've seen this at Le Mans in the past many times.
It's marginally uphill as well, just to add, and that was one of the drivers of the race from Dino Lunardi, who was picking up all the drivers in front of him, and so sad, got up to third place starting the final lap.
And I think has he just been told by a marshal that he can't continue, or maybe physically he can't continue? The checkered flag's further up the way, and talk about a dejected gait there from Dino Lunardi. He is being told to stand in a safe position, wants to desperately finish the race, but it ain't going to happen. And that car being shown has stopped on circuit. So what happened to the 98 car? He was off track. Oh, did he run into the back of a spinning... What was that?
Was it a CD Sport car?
Yeah, it was the 5 car. Yeah, good shout, Bruce. 5 car of Nick Adcock. So that sort of spun out of turn 7, and I just wonder whether Dino had little choice but to make contact with it. Strange that should make the car cut out, if indeed it did. That was halfway around the final lap, but then the problem only set in when he was exiting the final corner. So dramatic end to this race, up and down the order, and he didn't get to the line. So yeah, sadly Alcomel have removed him from the results now. That's horrendous, isn't it? But rules is rules, and Dino Lunardi gave absolutely everything. Matt Bell, a big hug with Maurice Smith. They are ecstatic, as you would understand. For Ligier it is at the sharp end of this result, with the sister car from Cool Racing, Edward Kohope and Nicola Marlini, finishing second. Third position for Matthias Kaiser and Rory Penttinen, and fourth place for the United Autosports entry of Daniel Schneider and Andy Merrick, despite a late spin for Merrick himself. Porsche home as the race winner. The 2 Ferraris in tow didn't change position. It kind of threatened to throughout that, but David Perel for Kessel, benefiting from a much shorter pit stop. It was 154 seconds, wasn't it, for the number 74 Ferrari, rather than the extended stop of 171 seconds for the Iron Lynx Ferrari of Rino Mastronardi and Nicholas Nielsen. Big grin behind the helmet for Julian Andlauer, and congratulations offered, of course, by Nicky Leutwiler. There he is, the star kid, and equal youngest guy at Le Mans 2 years ago, was it, with Phil Hansen, born on the same day, both Phil and Julian Andlauer. And we never kind of really were in doubt about the talents of the young Frenchman, but Nicky Leutwiler needed to put that Porsche in the right place prior to him taking over. Very, very different conditions greeted us at 2 o'clock this afternoon to get the Michelin Le Mans Cup on the way. And Yuri Wagner made an error. He was done for a jump start, jinking out of line and being off the track in the runoff area. But also, crucially, the car that would finish second ultimately also pinged for a jump start. Nicola Molini was ahead of Rory Penttinen when he should have been just behind and in second place on the grid. The highlights came thick and fast through the opening half an hour. And initially, there was a leading quartet of cars breaking away from the rest of the field. GT3 was very close as well up until the mandatory pit stop. Just the one pit stop, of course, for the GT3 cars. A clash between Jean Gloria and Moritz Krantz early on resulted in a spin then for Krantz, and he would be recovering from that for the remainder of his stint pretty much. Nicky Leutwiler battling hard with Michel Broniszewski. This was the moment the Porsche got ahead. Now, that wasn't for the race lead at the time. The Porsche had tumbled down to the rear of the GT3 pack, and it took Leutwiler a fair while to cleanly overtake a number of cars and put it in the box seat. We reckon no contact for Jean Gloria and Stefan Adler. That was just a spin of the Belgian's own making. He was offering some sort of wry explanations at half distance. Not his best stint, I think he admitted, but it would come good when he handed the car over for Laurence Heur, who eventually got home in 5th position. Off track as well for Steve Parrow in the 66 Rinaldi racing car. Two cool racing machines. This was the moment Matt Bell was able to get ahead of Edouard Kohope. Kohope caught out in the standing water to the outside of the double droite, and the car understeering very, very wide indeed. This was Merrick spinning once, twice, and 3 times in eventually coming to a halt, but he will have been very, very dizzy after that. And Matt Bell eventually bringing the sodden 69 car across the line to be the first of 4 Ligiers. Cool Racing, Graf and United Autosports. And we're also hearing about Maurice Smith having achieved something very special. More on that in a second. Let's get some reaction from the 2 winners.
I'm joined here by the winner of the LMP3 category, Matt Bell from Cool Racing, car number 69. What a fantastic run out there. And of course, you've got your first win of the season here at the Michelin Le Mans Cup. How do you feel?
Absolutely ecstatic. What an amazing race. What an amazing performance from the team. It's not just a win, but it's a P1-2. It feels like making up for that first race when Mo almost won that one and got the puncture cruelly with 2 laps to go. So that's all I was thinking of in the last few laps. No mistakes, stay away from all the debris, stay away from all the curbs. The conditions were really, really tough, especially towards the end there when the rain came down again. So it was just no mistakes, bring her home. Mo handed the car over to me in a great place so I could go out and attack and try and get the win, and that laid the foundations, and yeah, I was able to bring it home. So I'm so happy for the team. It's a great day. Yeah.
Maurice, congratulations. Thank you very much.
So we don't get to hear from Maurice Smith, but he is the first American driver to win since 2017, I'm told. That was John Faub and Sean Rahal in the Road to Le Mans event. Yeah, I remember that, at Le Mans itself. So Maurice Smith, the first American driver in 3 seasons, and also the first Porsche win in about the same amount of time. EB Motors took victory twice in 2017, and that's the first time we see a Porsche in 11th place overall as well take victory in GT3 ahead of the 74 Kessel Racing Ferrari and the Iron Lynx Championship leaders. Be interesting to see the latest positions in the championship actually, and whether that has spiced things up. That's kind of the idea of the pit stop handicap time. Great to hear from a very excited Matt Bell. Great day, not particularly weather-wise, but it'll live long in the memory of Cool Racing, certainly, with a 1-2 finish. And Mo, as he calls him, Maurice Smith, and Matt Bell, his teammate, heading to a very special podium. This has been the run of things all season, actually, amidst COVID-19. Just room for the individual class winners in a much more deliberately spaced out podium, although great to have a team representative there as well. Same's going to be the case for TFT. So Nicky Leutwiler and Julian Andlauer step forward now to their positions at a suitable social distance, 2 metres away from those from Cool Racing, and mutual applause from both teams. That's also great to see. Some smart Le Castellet 120 trophies now held aloft for the photographs that you'll be seeing forthcoming publications and on websites around the world. That is the first race, ACO-wise, of 2 today. Le Castellet 120 and the Le Castellet 240 to come later on today, which will be a 6:30 start. We're about just over 2 hours away from ELMS round 3, but that was the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Next up for these guys, a double header during Le Mans week over the weekend of the 19th and 20th of September. We got a midweek race, as we always typically do, over 55 minutes, and then the Saturday morning race as well for the Road to Le Mans, which will form rounds 4 and 5 of the Michelin Le Mans Cup. If Matt Bell's car wasn't wet enough already, he's just poured basically a full bottle of champagne over its roof as well. He's left some, though, to glug just off camera. As we head back to Haley Edmonds, because we've heard from the LMP3 winners, here are the winners of GT3.
I'm joined here by the winners of the GT3 category. Car number 2, TFT, Nicolas Luttweiler and Julien Andelauer. So Nicolas, we were just having a chat saying the last time you were here, unfortunately you didn't have the result you would have wanted, but you've got your revenge. You've taken the top spot of the podium. How does it feel?
Feels fantastic, no doubt about that. And it feels really great because it was an extremely difficult moment 5 weeks ago when we were here first, because it was a technical problem which we didn't expect. No one expects technical problems, but we had to go as we came, just with no result, nothing. And that was the start to a season with already on the back foot, and now coming back so strong. Thanks to Julien, he drove beautifully, masterly. So, and the team TFT just did a very good job in preparing the car for those conditions.
Thank you very much.
Nicky Luttweiler, the man from Freiburg in Switzerland. He's a former GT4 European champion with TFT, and now maybe working his way into contention with Julien Andelauer to be a top 3 finisher perhaps in this championship. It's tough when you don't have such a good result in the opening round. There are so few races in Michelin Le Mans Cup. Half points on offer at Le Mans for each of the 55-minute races in and around the 24 hours of Le Mans. But what it does provide is the ability to drive Circuit de la Sarre, all 8.5 miles of it, and 2 separate occasions to do that in the Road to Le Mans. And the target is, of course, to get drivers that have debuted in this particular championship into the 24 hours one day. So much going on, plenty of contact. We never really like to see that, but then there were spins galore as well. Thankfully not damaging too many race cars, and therefore we should see most of these out next month for the 24 Hours of Le Mans support races. Thanks so much to Haley Edmonds, working incredibly hard in difficult conditions down in the pit lane to bring us all the news and the driver interviews. My thanks to Bruce Jones as well. From Johnny Palmer, we pack things away as far as the 2-hour races are concerned in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. The shortened ones at Le Mans come next, and then trips to Italy and Portugal to end the year. We'll see you very soon. Bye for now.